The force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and destiny. For millennia, the Jedi spoke of balance, of light and darkness in eternal struggle. But the Force had never encountered something truly foreign, something that moved between stars without touching the fabric of hyperspace, something that carried the last embers of a civilization the galaxy would never know existed. Commander William Adama stood on the command deck of the Battlestar Galactica, watching his tactical display flicker with impossible readings. 3 days ago, they'd executed an emergency FTL jump to escape a silent ambush near the Palmer sector. The jump calculations had been desperate, coordinated under fire, and Doc Cottle had reported unusual radiation spikes in the FTL core just as they spooled up the drives. Then everything changed. The jump felt wrong from the first millisecond. Instead of the familiar stomach-dropping lurch of FTL transition, reality seemed to tear around them like wet paper. Adama had gripped his command chair as the Galactica shuddered through something that wasn't space, wasn't time, but existed in the screaming void between concepts. His crew reported seeing colors that shouldn't exist, hearing sounds in the vacuum, feeling their thoughts brushed by something vast and indifferent. When they emerged, the stars were wrong. Not just repositioned, fundamentally alien. Unknown constellations stretched across the viewports, and Andrades painted a picture of a stellar density that defied colonial cartography. Lieutenant Gaeta had run the calculation 17 times, his face growing paler with each iteration. They weren't in the 12 colonies anymore. They weren't in any space colonial science had ever theorized. Andrades' contact, Tactical Officer Lieutenant Duala announced, her professional calm barely masking the tension in her voice. Bearing 270, range 600 kilometers and closing. Configuration unknown. She's massive, sir, easily twice our size. Adama leaned forward, studying the sensor return. The contact accelerated with impossible smoothness, no visible thrust plume, no engine signature his instruments recognized. Whatever propulsion system it used, it wasn't reaction-based. The ship's profile resolved on the display, wedge-shaped Leviathan bristling with weapon emplacements, its hull a pale gray that seemed to drink in starlight. "Launch alert Vipers," Adama ordered. "And get me Colonel Ty." The Galactica's veteran executive officer arrived within seconds, his weathered face tight with concern. "What are we looking at?" "First contact," Adama said quietly. "In a universe we don't understand." On the main display, the massive vessel continued its approach, and now smaller contacts separated from its hull, swarms of single-pilot craft moving in perfect formation. They looked like angular eyeballs, twin-panel wings flanking spherical cockpits, and they flew with mechanical precision that sent ice through Adama's gut. For a moment, just a moment, he wondered if they'd jumped so far that even the Cylons had followed them here, had evolved new forms in this alien darkness. But these weren't Cylons. The sensor profile was all wrong, the energy signatures completely foreign. These were something else entirely, something that belonged to this strange new galaxy. "Sir, we're being hailed," communications reported. "Audio only, unknown language." "Put it through." The bridge speakers crackled with harsh, authoritative syllables that meant nothing to colonial ears. The cadence was military. Adama had heard enough command voices in his life to recognize one regardless of language. Whoever commanded that massive warship expected obedience, expected submission, and expected it immediately. "Response, sir?" Duala asked. Adama stared at the tactical display, at his battered battlestar surrounded by unknown hostiles in an unknown galaxy, carrying the last 45,000 souls of humanity in his ragtag fleet. Behind Galactica, Colonial 1 and the civilian ships hung in space like sheep waiting for wolves. The FTL drive was damaged. Galactica's chief engineer had reported it would need parts they didn't have and couldn't fabricate. They were stranded, low on fuel, and facing a military force that dwarfed anything the 12 colonies had ever constructed. He thought of Earth, the legendary 13th colony that had driven their desperate flight across the stars. They'd never find it now. They'd left their universe behind, emerged into something vast and terrible and utterly indifferent to their survival. "Hail them back," Adama said. "All frequencies. And launch the CAP, I want a full defensive screen around the civilian fleet." He paused, then added, "And someone find me a way to communicate with these people before they decide we're hostile." The alien warship continued its approach, and Captain Kara Starbuck Thrace's voice crackled over the wireless from her Viper cockpit. "Galactica, Apollo. These bogies are setting up an intercept pattern. Awaiting instructions." Adama watched the tactical board, watched his exhausted pilot's face yet another enemy in yet another desperate situation, and made the only choice he could. "Apollo, Galactica. Weapons tight. Repeat, weapons tight. Do not fire unless fired upon." "Copy that, Galactica. Weapons tight." The massive wedge-shaped vessel filled the viewport now, its hull marked with symbols Adama didn't recognize, crisp white characters against gray metal, somehow conveying authority and menace in equal measure. More of the eyeball-shaped fighters swarmed around it, and Adama counted at least 72 contacts on Drades. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and completely out of their depth. On the communications panel, Colonial technicians worked frantically to establish some kind of translation matrix, cycling through every linguistic database in Galactica's computers. Nothing matched. Whatever language these people spoke, it shared no common root with Colonial standard, no mathematical principles that might serve as bridge. "Sir," Gaeta called from his station, "I'm picking up active scanning from that vessel. Deep penetration sensors, unlike anything in our database. They're reading our hull composition, our power distribution, everything. Can we block it?" "No, sir. The scan type is completely unfamiliar. I don't even know what radiation band they're using." Adama gripped his command chair, feeling the weight of 45,000 lives pressing down on his shoulders. They'd survived the silent genocide, survived months of running and fighting and dying, survived the desperate jump that had brought them here. Now they faced something new, something that might prove even more dangerous than the machines that had destroyed their worlds. The alien warship slowed to a stop relative to Galactica, maintaining a distance of 300 kilometers, just outside effective gun range by Colonial standards, though Adama suspected these people had weapons that didn't care about such limitations. The eyeball fighters established a perfect perimeter, their formation speaking to military discipline that would have impressed even the Colonial Fleet at its height. Then, finally, the alien transmission changed. New voices, mechanical and flat, cycling through what sounded like hundreds of languages in rapid succession, some musical, some guttural, some that didn't sound like they should come from human throats at all. A translation protocol, Adama realized. They were searching for common ground, trying to find a language both sides might understand. "Get that recording to linguistics," Adama ordered. "I want analysis on every syllable." Colonel Tai moved to stand beside his commander, his voice low. "Bill, if this goes south, we can't run. The FTL is offline for at least 48 hours, and that's if Tyrol can fabricate replacement parts from what we have." "I know. So what's the play?" Adama stared at the alien warship, at this first representative of a galaxy that didn't know the 12 colonies had ever existed, that didn't know or care about the Cylon War or the articles of colonization or anything that made humanity human. He thought about his son Lee flying CAP in his Viper, about President Rosslyn probably watching from Colonial One, about every man, woman, and child in the fleet who depended on the decisions made in the next few minutes. "We talk," Adama said. "We find a way to communicate. And we survive. It's what we do." The alien transmission continued its linguistic cycling, and somewhere in Galactica's CIC, Colonial technicians worked to bridge the gap between universes. Outside the viewport, the massive gray warship waited with the patience of absolute power, and Commander William Adama prepared to make first contact in a galaxy far, far from home. If you want to see more crossovers between different sci-fi universes and Star Wars, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character or ship you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Specialist Anastasia Duala, working with the linguistics team, discovered that one of the alien transmission's language samples contained mathematical principles embedded in its syntax, prime number sequences, geometric ratios, universal constants. It wasn't a language meant for conversation, but rather a bridge language, something designed for exactly this situation: first contact with an unknown species. Within 2 hours, a crude translation protocol had been established. The alien vessel identified itself as the Imperial Star Destroyer Relentless, commanded by Captain Davith Sword of the Galactic Empire. The words meant nothing to Adama. He'd never heard of an empire that spanned a galaxy, never conceived of a political entity operating on such scale. The 12 colonies had been 12 worlds. These people spoke casually of thousands of systems, millions of worlds, a scope of civilization that made humanity's achievement seem like a child's sandcastle before an ocean. Captain Sword's holographic transmission materialized in Galactica's CIC, a tall, severe man in a gray-green uniform adorned with rank insignia that spoke to rigid military hierarchy. His eyes swept the Colonial Command Center with undisguised assessment, cataloging every detail, every weakness. When he spoke, the translation came through with a mechanical undertone, words slightly out of sync with lip movements. Unknown vessel, you have entered Imperial space without proper authorization. Your ship configuration is unrecorded in any Imperial database, and your engine signatures are unusual. Sword paused, his expression sharpening. Identify your homeworld, your political allegiance, and the nature of your propulsion technology. Adama stood in the CIC, aware that every officer on the bridge was watching him, waiting to see how their commander would handle this. He'd dealt with politicians, with military brass, with silent negotiations before the fall. But this was different. This was a man who represented power on a scale Adama was only beginning to comprehend. I am Commander William Adama of the Colonial Fleet Battlestar Galactica. We are the remnants of the 12 colonies of Kobol, and we are not from your galaxy. He let that sink in for a moment, watching Sword's face for reaction. We arrived here through an accident, a malfunction in our faster-than-light drive. We mean no intrusion into your space and seek only to repair our vessel and continue our journey. Sword's expression flickered with something, skepticism, perhaps, or calculation. Another galaxy. An extraordinary claim, Commander. One that will require substantial evidence. Our stellar cartography doesn't match any system in your databases, Adama replied. Our technology operates on principles your sensors can't identify. I'd say that's substantial evidence. Or evidence of clever deception. Sword leaned forward slightly in his holographic projection. The Empire has encountered many fraudulent claims, many attempts to conceal illegal operations behind elaborate stories. However, I am not without reason. You will permit a boarding party to inspect your vessel, to verify your claims and assess whether you pose a threat to Imperial security. Cooperation will be noted favorably in my report. Colonel Tai stiffened beside Adama, his hand moving unconsciously toward his sidearm. The idea of allowing armed strangers aboard Galactica, of exposing the ship's systems and the fleet's vulnerability, went against every military instinct. But Adama could read the situation clearly. They were surrounded, outgunned, and stranded. Refusing would likely mean combat, and combat would mean casualties the fleet couldn't afford. You may send a small delegation, Adama said carefully. Unarmed. They will be escorted at all times and restricted to designated areas of the ship. In return, I want assurances that my fleet will not be fired upon and that we will be allowed to make repairs. Sword smiled, a thin, cold expression that didn't reach his eyes. The Empire is not unreasonable, Commander. Comply with our inspection, demonstrate you are not hostile elements, and you will find us quite accommodating. Stand by to receive our shuttle. The holographic transmission cut out, leaving the CIC in tense silence. Adama turned to Tai. Get a security detail to the starboard hangar bay. Marines, full tactical gear, but weapons safed. I want them professional but ready. You really think letting these people aboard is smart? Tai asked quietly. I think we don't have a choice, Adama replied. But that doesn't mean we have to make it easy. Restrict their access to public areas only, no engineering, no armory, no CIC. And have Starbuck keep the CAP at full alert. If this goes bad, I want our people ready to respond. 30 minutes later, an angular shuttle detached from the Relentless, its design all sharp edges and imperial efficiency. It crossed the space between vessels with casual ease, docking with Galactica's hangar bay through an airlock adapter that somehow interfaced perfectly with colonial systems, as if the Empire had encountered enough diverse technologies that universal docking standards were routine. The shuttle's boarding ramp lowered with a hydraulic hiss, and 6 figures descended into Galactica's hangar bay. 4 were soldiers, stormtroopers, their armor a pristine white that seemed almost ceremonial, carrying weapons that looked like they belonged in a science fiction film rather than a military arsenal. The armor's design was simultaneously advanced and strangely archaic, segmented plates over a bodysuit, helmets that completely concealed their faces behind emotionless masks. The other 2 figures were officers. One wore the same gray-green uniform as Captain Sword, his bearing suggesting intelligence or political oversight. The other was something else entirely, robed in black, a hood shadowing features Adama couldn't quite see clearly, moving with a predatory grace that set every instinct screaming danger. Colonial Marines stood at attention around the hangar bay, their weapons lowered but ready. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, 2 military forces sizing each other up, each trying to read the other's capabilities and intentions. The gray-uniformed officer stepped forward, his translator already active. I am Lieutenant Commander Arden Vex, Imperial Intelligence. This is Inquisitor Kale of the Imperial Inquisitorius. We are here to verify your claims and assess your vessel's origin and capabilities. The robed figure, the Inquisitor, turned his head slowly, studying the Colonial Marines, the Viper craft arranged in the hangar bay, the very air of Galactica itself. When he spoke, his voice carried an odd resonance, as if 2 voices overlapped slightly. Your crew is afraid. I can sense it. Fear mixed with exhaustion, with desperation. You have been running for a long time, Commander Adama. Adama felt ice run down his spine. There was no way this man could know that, no way he could sense emotions or read their situation so accurately from simple observation. Unless their technology included psychological analysis far beyond colonial science, or unless something else was at play here, something the commander didn't understand. We've had a difficult journey, Adama said neutrally. This way, please. I'll escort you personally. As the Imperial delegation moved deeper into Galactica, Adama watched the Inquisitor carefully. The man moved like a predator, like someone who'd never encountered a threat he couldn't overcome. His attention lingered on Colonel Tai, on the Marines, on the very structure of the ship, absorbing details, cataloging weaknesses. They passed through corridors where colonial crew watched nervously, where pilots clustered in small groups whispering about the strange visitors, where the very presence of outsiders felt like a violation of Galactica's sanctuary status. The Battlestar had been home, fortress, and last refuge for months. Now it was exposed, vulnerable, under the scrutiny of powers they didn't understand. Lieutenant Commander Vex asked technical questions, about the ship's age, its construction, its capabilities. Adama answered carefully, providing information that was verifiable through observation while omitting strategic details. The FTL drive's condition, for instance, went unmentioned. Let them think Galactica could jump at any moment if necessary. But it was the Inquisitor who asked the more disturbing questions. Your crew believes in gods, he said, not quite a question. Polytheistic worship, ancient texts, prophecies of a promised land. Curious. Most civilizations in this galaxy have moved beyond such primitive beliefs. Our faith is our own business, Adama replied, his voice hardening slightly. Of course. The Inquisitor smiled beneath his hood. I meant no offense, Commander. I merely find it fascinating how you've maintained such traditions across your journey. Tell me, do your gods speak to you? Do they guide your path? They provide comfort to my people. That's guidance enough. They reached one of Galactica's observation decks, where the civilian fleet hung visible in space beyond the reinforced windows. Dozens of ships, civilian freighters and passenger vessels, all running dark to conserve fuel, all waiting desperately for Galactica to lead them to safety that might never come. Vex studied the fleet through the viewport, his expression unreadable. "Refugees," he said quietly. "You're not a military expedition. You're evacuating. Your worlds were destroyed, weren't they? That's why you're here, why you're running." Adama said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. "The Empire has encountered this before," Vex continued. "Civilizations destroyed by war, by plague, by catastrophic collapse. It's always tragic. But the galaxy is vast and unforgiving, Commander. Without proper protection, without the strength that comes from unity under imperial authority, most refugee groups don't survive long. There are pirates, slavers, hostile species who would see your people as easy prey. Are you offering protection or making a threat?" Adama asked bluntly. Vex turned from the viewport, meeting Adama's eyes. "I'm offering perspective. The Empire maintains order across thousands of systems. We have the resources, the technology, the infrastructure to help you. Sanctuary worlds where your people could settle. Technology to repair your ship. Food, fuel, medical supplies, everything you need. In exchange, we would simply ask for your cooperation. Your FTL technology is unlike anything in our databases. Such innovations could benefit the entire galaxy. You want our jump drives. We want to understand them, yes. Is that so unreasonable? You arrive in our space, claiming dimensional transit, carrying technology that defies our science. Surely you understand our caution. But if you prove trustworthy, if you demonstrate willingness to cooperate, the Empire can be extraordinarily generous." Adama studied the intelligence officer, reading the calculated offer for what it was: surrender your technology, submit to imperial authority, and perhaps you'll be allowed to survive. It was the same game every power structure played: offer help with one hand while concealing the chains in the other. Before Adama could respond, the Inquisitor spoke again, his voice carrying that odd resonance. "You have reservations, Commander. You've dealt with empires before, haven't you? Governments that promised salvation while tightening their grip. You're wondering if we're any different. Are you?" Adama asked quietly. The Inquisitor smiled, a cold expression that held no warmth. "That depends entirely on whether you're willing to embrace order over chaos, Commander. The galaxy is at war. Rebel terrorists seek to destabilize the peace the Empire has established. In such times, one must choose sides carefully. Choose correctly, and your people thrive. Choose poorly." He left the sentence hanging, its implication clear. Alarms suddenly blared through Galactica's corridors, a priority wireless transmission. Duala's voice crackled over the ship's intercom: "Commander Adama to CIC, priority alert. Dradi's contact, multiple vessels just entered sensor range. Configuration unknown, but they're broadcasting on Rebel Alliance frequencies." Adama's jaw tightened. The inspection, the offers, the veiled threats, all of it had been preamble. Now the real test was beginning. He looked at Vex, at the Inquisitor, and saw confirmation in their expressions. They'd known. This had been a deliberate delay, keeping Galactica exposed while additional forces moved into position. "Commander," Vex said calmly, "it appears your arrival has attracted unwanted attention. The rebellion is always eager to exploit any potential asset against the Empire. I strongly suggest you remain with us. These terrorists are not to be trusted." Adama turned without answering, moving quickly toward CIC. Behind him, he heard the Inquisitor speak one more time, his words carrying through the corridor like a prophecy: "Choose carefully, Commander Adama. In this galaxy, neutrality is not an option. You will stand with order or fall with chaos. There is no third path. But William Adama had spent his entire military career finding third paths when everyone else saw only two choices. He'd survived the Cylon War by refusing to accept predetermined outcomes. And he'd be damned if he'd let some empire, no matter how vast, dictate the Colonial Fleet's fate without a fight. The game had just become far more complicated. The CIC erupted into controlled chaos as Adama strode through the hatch, the Imperial delegation following close behind. On the main tactical display, New Draddi's contacts painted a picture that made his blood run cold. 3 medium-sized vessels emerging from what appeared to be hyperspace, their signatures completely different from the Imperial Star Destroyer's energy profile. They moved with purpose, vectoring toward the civilian fleet with careful precision. Identification? Adama demanded. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies, sir, Duala reported. Encryption protocols we don't recognize, but the translation matrix is picking up fragments. They're calling themselves, the Rebel Alliance. They're requesting to speak with, the unknown vessel's commanding officer. Lieutenant Commander Vex moved to stand beside the tactical display, his expression darkening. Commander Adama, those vessels are enemies of the Empire. Terrorists who have killed thousands of innocent Imperial citizens in their misguided crusade. I strongly advise against any communication with them. This is my ship, Commander Vex, Adama replied coldly. I'll decide who I speak with. He turned to Duala. Put them through. The communications panel crackled, and a woman's voice emerged, calm, measured, carrying the weight of authority earned through experience rather than simple rank. Unknown vessel, this is Captain Syndulla of the Rebel Alliance. We detected your arrival and the Imperial interception. We mean you no harm and request permission to discuss your situation. You have options beyond Imperial subjugation. Beside Adama, the Inquisitor's presence seemed to intensify, the shadows of his hood deepening. Do not listen to their lies, Commander. The rebellion offers nothing but death and chaos. They would use you, drain your resources, then discard you when you're no longer useful. Galactica, this is Apollo, Lee Adama's voice cut through the wireless from his Viper. The rebel ships are launching fighters, small craft, single-pilot configurations. They're forming up in a defensive screen but keeping distance from both us and the Imperial vessel. Awaiting instructions. Adama felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Two factions, each claiming righteousness, each warning against the other, and his fleet caught precisely in the middle. It was a trap of galactic proportions, choose one side and make an enemy of the other, or refuse both and potentially face annihilation from all directions. Captain Syndulla, Adama transmitted, I appreciate your concern, but as you can see, we're already in discussions with Imperial representatives. I'm not interested in being pulled into someone else's war. With respect, Commander, the woman's voice carried a note of urgency now, you're already in it. The moment the Empire detected you, you became a piece on their board. They'll take your technology, conscript your people, and if you resist, they'll destroy you. We've seen it happen to dozens of independent systems. Rebel propaganda, Vex interjected sharply. The Empire offers order and protection. These terrorists offer only violence and empty promises. Colonel Tai moved closer to Adama, his voice low. Bill, we've got 3 factions in play now, us, them, and them. Our Vipers are running on fumes, our ammunition is limited, and the FTL is still offline. We can't fight our way out of this. I know, Adama murmured. He studied the tactical display, watching the careful positioning of all 3 forces. The Imperial Star Destroyer held position with absolute confidence, its massive bulk and overwhelming firepower speaking to power that didn't need to threaten openly. The rebel vessels maintained distance, offering space rather than pressure. And Galactica sat in the middle, a battered warship from another universe trying to navigate politics it barely understood. President Laura Roslin's voice crackled over a private channel. Commander, I'm watching this from Colonial 1. What's your assessment? That we're fracked either way, Madam President, Adama replied. The Empire wants our technology and our submission. The rebellion wants us as allies against the Empire. Neither one cares about the Colonial Fleet except as a resource to be exploited. Then what do we do? Adama was silent for a long moment, thinking through options, calculating odds. Then something occurred to him, a pattern he'd seen before in silent negotiations, in political maneuvering back when the colonies still existed. When two sides wanted something from you, the smart play wasn't to choose one or the other. The smart play was to make them compete. We play them against each other, Adama said. We make it clear that we're willing to deal, but only on our terms. Let them bid for our cooperation. On the main display, the rebel vessels held their position, neither advancing nor retreating. Adama could almost feel their patience, the discipline of people who'd learned to wait, to assess, to pick their battles carefully. It reminded him of his own fleet's desperation, the constant calculation of resources and risks. Lieutenant Gaeta, Adama ordered, open a channel to both the Imperial vessel and the rebel ships. Broadcast on all frequencies. Channel open, sir. Adama took a breath, aware that his next words would determine the Colonial Fleet's fate in this new galaxy. This is Commander William Adama of the Battlestar Galactica. To all parties, we are not citizens of your galaxy and have no stake in your conflicts. We arrived here through accident, not choice. Our only interest is the survival and safety of our people. He paused, letting that sink in before continuing. We will not be coerced, intimidated, or manipulated into choosing sides. However, we are willing to negotiate with any party that approaches us in good faith. We need supplies, fuel, food, and materials to repair our damaged systems. We also need information about this galaxy and safe passage to neutral space where we can continue our journey. In exchange, we can offer technical consultation and limited military assistance on a case-by-case basis. But let me be absolutely clear, the Colonial Fleet answers to no one but ourselves. We've already lost our worlds. We will not lose our freedom. Silence followed his transmission, a pregnant pause as both Imperial and Rebel forces processed his declaration. Adama could feel vexed displeasure radiating beside him, could sense the Inquisitor's cold assessment. But he'd meant every word. The colonies might be gone, but their principles weren't. Captain Syndulla responded first. Commander Adama, the Rebel Alliance respects your independence. We would welcome the opportunity to discuss mutual assistance without demands for allegiance. Would you be willing to receive a diplomatic delegation? Before Adama could answer, Vex spoke sharply. Commander, I must protest. Allowing rebel terrorists aboard your vessel would be an act of hostility against the Empire. Captain Sword will interpret such action as alliance with enemies of Imperial authority. Is that a threat? Adama asked quietly. It's a statement of fact. The Empire does not tolerate those who aid insurgents. Adama turned to face the intelligence officer directly. Then perhaps the Empire needs to learn that the universe is bigger than its authority. You said yourself we're from another galaxy. What makes you think your laws apply to us? The Inquisitor stepped forward, and suddenly the temperature in the CIC seemed to drop. His voice carried an edge that hadn't been there before, something dark and ancient and utterly confident. Because, Commander, in this galaxy, power determines law. And the Empire possesses power beyond your comprehension. I would hate to see your fleet destroyed over simple stubbornness. Admiral on deck. Colonel Tai barked, though no admiral had entered. It was a distraction, a way to break the tension that had built to dangerous levels. Adama seized the opportunity. Commander Vex, Inquisitor Kale, I thank you for your inspection and your offers. But I think it's time for you to return to your vessel while I consult with my officers and our civilian leadership. We'll provide you with our decision within 12 hours. Commander, Vex began. 12 hours, Adama repeated firmly. That's not negotiable. The Inquisitor studied Adama for a long moment, those shadowed eyes seeming to pierce through layers of flesh and bone to examine the soul beneath. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. "Very well, Commander. 12 hours. But know this, the Emperor's patience is not infinite, and neither is mine. Choose wisely." The Imperial delegation departed, escorted by Colonial Marines who looked profoundly relieved to see them go. The moment the hangar bay confirmed their shuttle had undocked, Ty turned to Adama. "That was either brilliant or suicidal. I'm not sure which." "Neither am I," Adama admitted. "But at least we've bought time." He turned to Duala. "Send a message to Captain Syndulla. Tell her I'm willing to meet with a small rebel delegation, no more than 3 people, unarmed, similar restrictions to what we gave the Imperials. But make it clear that listening to their offer doesn't constitute alliance." "Aye, sir." President Roslin's face appeared on a secure video channel, her expression troubled. "Commander, you're walking a very dangerous line. These people have been at war for years. They're not going to appreciate neutrality." "I don't care what they appreciate, Madam President. I care about getting this fleet out of their crossfire." Adama rubbed his eyes, suddenly feeling every year of his age. "We need supplies, we need repairs, and we need information. If we can get those things by playing both sides against each other, that's what we'll do. And if they force us to choose, then we fight," Adama said simply. "We've survived the Silence. We can survive this." But even as he said it, watching the Imperial Star Destroyer and rebel vessels maintain their careful distances on the tactical display, Adama wondered if that was true. The Silence had been terrifying, but they'd been a known threat, technology and tactics the colonies understood. These people, this galaxy, operated on principles that defied everything colonial science had established as possible. The Inquisitor had moved without sound, had spoken with voices that overlapped reality, had sensed emotions that should have been invisible. The Imperial weapons were energy-based rather than kinetic, their ships moved without visible propulsion, and their scanner technology penetrated colonial shielding like it didn't exist. And then there were the rebels, a military force crazy enough to challenge an empire that spanned a galaxy, experienced enough to have survived this long against overwhelming odds. What desperation or conviction drove people to that kind of resistance? "Sir," Gaeta called from his station, "I'm picking up something strange. The Drades is showing, it's like spatial distortions around the rebel vessels. Energy readings that spike and drop randomly. I can't get a solid lock." "Jamming?" "Maybe, but not like any electronic warfare we've encountered. It's almost like the space around them is fluctuating." Gaeta shook his head, frustrated. "I don't have a better explanation than that." Adama filed that information away. Everything in this galaxy seemed to operate on physics that colonial science couldn't quite grasp. Jump drives that used hyperspace rather than FTL transit, energy weapons that seemed to ignore traditional physics, sensor systems that read through solid matter like it was transparent. They were children playing in an adult's war, and Adama knew it. But children who'd survived genocide learned to adapt quickly or they died. The Colonial Fleet would adapt. They had to. "Incoming transmission from the rebel vessels," Duala reported. "Captain Syndulla accepts your conditions. She'll arrive with 2 others in 1 hour." "Good. Ty, I want security doubled. Same protocols as with the Imperials, restricted access, full escort, Marines on standby. And get Chief Tyrol working on the FTL drive. I want jump capability restored as soon as humanly possible." "What about the supplies?" Ty asked. "We're down to maybe 3 days of fuel at current consumption, and food stocks are getting critical. One problem at a time, Sol." Adama turned back to the tactical display, studying the 3-way standoff that had developed in space around his fleet. "First we figure out what these rebels really want. Then we figure out how to get what we need without selling our souls in the process." An hour later, a small rebel shuttle approached Galactica, sleek and angular, its design speaking to functionality over intimidation. It docked smoothly, and 3 figures emerged into the hangar bay where Colonial Marines waited with weapons lowered but ready. The woman leading the group was Twi'lek, blue-skinned with headtails that marked her as something distinctly non-human, yet her eyes held intelligence and experience that transcended species. She wore practical flight gear adorned with rank insignia, and moved with the confidence of someone who'd earned respect through capability rather than birthright. Behind her came 2 others, a human male with the bearing of a seasoned soldier, scarred and weather-worn, and something that made several Colonial Marines step back in shock, a species they'd never imagined, orange-skinned with white facial markings, wearing robes that suggested either religious or diplomatic function. Captain Hera Syndulla smiled as she approached, her hand extended in a gesture that seemed universal across galaxies. "Commander Adama. Thank you for seeing us. I'm Captain Syndulla of the Ghost. This is Captain Rex," she indicated the scarred soldier, "and this is Ahsoka Tano, formerly of the Jedi Order." Adama shook her hand, noting the strength in her grip, the calluses that spoke to hands-on piloting. "Welcome aboard the Galactica. I'll be honest, Captain, I'm not sure what a Jedi is, and I don't know anything about your Rebel Alliance except that the Empire really doesn't like you." "That's a fair starting point," Syndulla replied. "And we'll explain everything. But first, Commander, I think you should know something important, that Imperial Inquisitor who was just here. The Force-sensitive in the black robes. He's one of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. And if he's taken an interest in your fleet, you're in more danger than you realize." Adama led the rebel delegation to Galactica's wardroom, a relatively neutral space where he could control the environment and ensure security. Colonial Marines posted at every entrance maintained vigilant watch, though Adama noted that Captain Rex seemed to catalog every defensive position with the automatic assessment of a career soldier. The scarred man moved like someone who'd spent decades in combat, efficient, aware, missing nothing. But it was Ahsoka Tano who drew Adama's attention most. The orange-skinned woman carried herself with a serenity that seemed out of place in a war zone, yet beneath that calm exterior, Adama sensed a core of absolute conviction. When she'd entered Galactica, she'd paused for just a moment, her head tilting as if listening to something no one else could hear. "You mentioned this Inquisitor is dangerous," Adama said once they were seated. President Roslin had joined via secure video link, her image displayed on the wardroom's communication screen. "I'd appreciate you being specific about what that means." Syndulla glanced at Ahsoka, who nodded slightly before speaking. Her voice carried a quality that reminded Adama of priests back in the colonies, the tone of someone who touched something beyond ordinary experience. "The Inquisitors serve the Emperor directly. They're Force-sensitive beings who hunt down and eliminate anyone who might threaten Imperial control. Jedi, mostly, though they've expanded their targets in recent years." "Force-sensitive," Adama repeated. "You're going to have to explain that term." Ahsoka smiled gently. "The Force is an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, penetrates us, binds the galaxy together. Some people can sense it, manipulate it, use it to enhance their abilities. The Jedi Order once served as peacekeepers, using the Force to maintain balance and protect the innocent. The Sith, those who use the Force's dark side, seek power and domination." "That sounds like religious mysticism," Colonel Tai said skeptically. "It would," Captain Rex interjected, "except it's demonstrably real. I've served alongside Jedi for years. Seen them move objects without touching them, sense danger before it happens, influence minds with a word. Whatever you want to call it, mysticism, psychic ability, evolved consciousness, the Force exists, and those who can use it are incredibly dangerous." Adama absorbed this information, his mind racing through implications. The Inquisitor's unnatural presence, his ability to sense emotions, the cold certainty in his voice, all of it suddenly made more sense in this context. "And the Empire employs these Force users as enforcers. As hunters," Ahsoka corrected. "The Emperor himself is a Sith Lord, possibly the most powerful one in millennia. He orchestrated the Clone Wars, manipulated both sides, then used the chaos to transform the Republic into an empire. The Jedi tried to stop him. Most of us died in the attempt. Her voice carried old grief, ancient wounds that hadn't fully healed. The Inquisitors are what remains, Jedi who were captured, tortured, twisted into serving the dark side. So this Kale, Adama said, he was once one of your peacekeepers. Possibly. The inquisitorious recruitment methods are varied. Some were Jedi. Others were Force-sensitive beings discovered and corrupted before they could be properly trained. But they all serve the same purpose, eliminating threats to Imperial control. Ahsoka leaned forward, her expression intent. Commander, when Inquisitor Kale looked at your ship, at your people, he wasn't just inspecting for Imperial intelligence. He was sensing something deeper, the emotional resonance of your crew, the desperation that drives you, the hope you still carry. That information is far more valuable to the Empire than technical specifications. President Roslin's voice came through the comm link. Why? What would the Empire do with emotional intelligence about refugees? Exploit it, Syndulla answered. The Empire specializes in identifying vulnerabilities and leveraging them. They'll offer you everything you need, fuel, supplies, protection, sanctuary worlds. They'll be generous, accommodating, helpful. And slowly, through 1,000 small concessions, they'll own you. By the time you realize you become Imperial subjects, it'll be too late to resist. That's assuming we'd fall for such manipulation, Tai said. You're exhausted, Ahsoka replied gently. Your people are desperate. You've been running from something terrible, I can sense the trauma in your crew, the weight of loss. When you're that vulnerable, promises of safety become very attractive. The Empire understands this. They've assimilated hundreds of refugee populations using exactly this strategy. Adama studied the three rebels, weighing their words against the Imperial delegation's earlier proposals. The pattern Ahsoka described matched psychological warfare tactics he'd encountered before, make the target dependent, then gradually increase control until resistance became impossible. The Cylons had tried similar approaches during ceasefire negotiations. Alright, Adama said. So the Empire wants to control us, and you're warning us about their methods. What does the Rebel Alliance want? Syndulla smiled slightly. Honestly? We want to understand how you got here. Your ship's propulsion technology is unlike anything we've encountered. You don't use hyperspace, your engines operate on completely different principles. That fascinates us from a technical standpoint. But more importantly, it represents something the Empire can't control. You want our jump drives, Adama stated flatly. No, Ahsoka interjected. We want you to keep them. Independent transit capability that the Empire can't track or intercept would be invaluable for refugee transport, for evacuation operations, for breaking Imperial blockades. We're not asking you to give us the technology. We're asking if you'd be willing to help people escape Imperial oppression. Using our ships as a transport service. Using your ships to save lives, Syndulla corrected. Look, Commander, I'm not going to lie to you. The Rebel Alliance needs every advantage we can get. We're fighting an empire that controls most of the galaxy, that has resources and military power beyond measure. Every independent element that refuses Imperial control helps our cause. But we're also genuinely trying to help people, civilians caught in war zones, beings persecuted for their species or beliefs, anyone the Empire deems expendable. Captain Rex spoke up, his gravel voice carrying hard experience. I fought in the Clone Wars, Commander. Served under Jedi generals, saw civilizations destroyed, watched good people make impossible choices. The Empire rose from that chaos by promising order and stability. What they delivered was tyranny. I've spent years fighting them, and I can tell you this, neutrality isn't an option they respect. You're either with them or against them. And the rebellion? Adama asked. You respect neutrality? We respect people's right to choose their own path, Ahsoka said. If you want no part of our war, we'll honor that. But we'll also be honest about what that means. The Empire will pressure you, manipulate you, and eventually force you into compliance. Staying neutral requires constant vigilance and the strength to resist when they inevitably demand more than you're willing to give. Adama was quiet for a long moment, thinking through the conversation's implications. Both factions had made their pitches, the Empire offering protection and resources in exchange for cooperation, the rebels offering information and respect for independence in exchange for potential assistance. Neither offer was purely altruistic. Both sides wanted something from the Colonial Fleet. Let me ask you something, Adama said finally. This war you're fighting, how long has it been going on? The Rebel Alliance formally organized about 4 years ago, Syndulla answered. But resistance to imperial control started nearly 20 years ago when the Republic fell. Some of us have been fighting since the beginning. 20 years. And you still don't have enough support to challenge them directly? The Empire controls the propaganda, the resources, the infrastructure, Rex said. Most citizens either support them out of fear or genuine belief in imperial ideology. Changing hearts and minds takes time. We win battles, liberate systems, but holding territory against imperial counterattacks is nearly impossible. It's a long game, Commander. We're playing for the next generation's freedom, not next month's victory. Adama understood that kind of warfare, the grinding persistence required when facing overwhelming odds. The Colonial Fleet had been living it since the silent attack. But there was something else bothering him, something about the way Ahsoka had described the Force and its users. This Force, Adama said, you said it's created by all living things. Does that mean everyone has some connection to it? In theory, yes, Ahsoka replied. Though most beings never develop conscious awareness of it. Force sensitivity, the ability to actively use the Force, is relatively rare. Why do you ask? Because we have something in the colonies. We had something, he corrected himself, the loss still sharp. Religious texts about the sacred scrolls, prophecies about Earth and the 13th tribe. Our priests spoke of divine guidance, of being led toward our destiny. I always thought it was metaphor, comforting stories to give meaning to random chance. But if this force exists, if it can influence events and guide people, he trailed off, uncomfortable with where his thoughts were leading. Ahsoka's expression softened with understanding. The Force works in mysterious ways, Commander. Some believe it has a will, a purpose. Others think it simply responds to the intentions of those who touch it. I can't tell you if your gods and the Force are the same thing. But I can tell you this, your people's faith isn't diminished by the Force's existence. If anything, it suggests they were sensing something real all along. A knock on the wardroom hatch interrupted them. Lieutenant Gaeta entered, his expression troubled. Commander, sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. Drades is picking up new contacts, a lot of them. At least 30 vessels just dropped out of hyperspace on the system's edge. Configuration matches Trade Federation design, according to the Rebel transponder codes we're monitoring. Syndulla was on her feet instantly. Trade Federation? Out here? That doesn't make sense, they haven't been active since the Clone Wars ended. These contacts are broadcasting separatist recognition codes, Gaeta continued. Old ones, 20 years out of date, but they're definitely there. And Commander, they're heading straight for us. Ahsoka and Rex exchanged sharp glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. That's impossible, Rex said. The Separatist fleet was dismantled after the war. Dooku was killed, Grievous was eliminated, the droid armies were shut down. There shouldn't be any active Separatist vessels left. Well, there are 30 of them on my Drades, Adama replied, already moving toward the hatch. Captain Syndulla, I'm afraid we're going to have to continue this conversation later. My ship needs me in CIC. Commander, wait, Syndulla called. If those really are Separatist vessels, they're carrying droid armies. thousands of battle droids designed for planetary assault. They're incredibly dangerous, and they don't negotiate. You need to be prepared for immediate combat. My people have been prepared for combat since the day the Cylons destroyed our worlds, Adama said. We'll handle it. As they rushed toward CIC, Ahsoka spoke quietly, her voice troubled. Commander, there's something wrong here. I can feel it in the Force, a darkness, a manipulation. Separatist vessels don't just appear from nowhere after 20 years. Someone brought them here deliberately. The Empire? Roslin suggested over the comm. Or someone using Imperial resources, Ahsoka agreed. This feels orchestrated. The timing is too convenient. You arrive, the Empire investigates, we make contact, and suddenly a third threat appears that forces everyone into immediate action. Someone is testing you, Commander. Testing how you respond under pressure. Adama felt ice settle in his gut. If Ahsoka was right, if this was a deliberate setup, then every choice he made in the next hours would be scrutinized by forces he didn't fully understand. The Empire would be watching to see if he'd request their protection. The rebels would be watching to see if he'd cooperate with them against a common threat. And somewhere in the background, someone was pulling strings, manipulating events to force his hand. They reached CIC to find controlled chaos. The tactical display showed the 30 new contacts advancing in perfect formation, geometric precision that reminded Adama uncomfortably of silent fleet movements. The Imperial Star Destroyer had altered position, moving to intercept the approaching vessels, and the rebel ships had begun launching additional fighters. Sir, Duala reported, the Imperial vessel is hailing us. Captain Sword wants to speak with you immediately. Put him through. Sword's holographic projection materialized, his expression grim. Commander Adama, you see the situation. Those are separatist remnant vessels, terrorist resources that should have been destroyed decades ago. This is precisely the chaos the rebellion breeds. Stand down your weapons and allow Imperial forces to handle this threat. We have experience dealing with droid armies. Negative, Captain Sword, Adama replied. My fleet is in danger, and I'll defend it however I see fit. Then you're making a grave mistake. Those vessels carry overwhelming force. Your antiquated weapons won't penetrate their shields effectively. Accept Imperial assistance, Commander, before your stubbornness gets your people killed. Before Adama could respond, the separatist vessels opened fire, massive volleys of energy weapons that lit up the tactical display like a light show. But their targets weren't Galactica or the civilian fleet. They were targeting the Imperial Star Destroyer, overwhelming its shields with concentrated firepower that spoke to coordinated tactical doctrine. And in that moment, Adama understood. This wasn't a random attack. This was a message. Someone was demonstrating that the Empire wasn't invincible, that their vaunted military superiority could be challenged. Someone was showing the Colonial Fleet that there were other players in this galaxy's deadly game. Launch all Vipers, Adama ordered. Action stations throughout the ship. Get our point defense systems online. And someone tell me what the hell those things are before they turn their guns on us. Captain Syndulla moved to stand beside the tactical display, her practiced eye reading the battle developing in space. Those are Lucrehulk-class battleships, cargo vessels converted for military use. Each one carries thousands of battle droids and hundreds of droid starfighters. Commander, if they launch their full complement, we're looking at overwhelming numerical superiority. Then we'd better make sure they don't get the chance to launch, Adama said. He turned to his weapons officer. Target their launch bays. Conventional ordnance, full spreads. Let's see how their shields handle good old-fashioned colonial firepower. As Galactica's gun batteries opened fire, as Vipers screamed into space to face an enemy they didn't understand, as the Imperial and Rebel forces engaged the Separatist fleet from opposite flanks, Commander William Adama stood in his CIC and made a decision that would define the Colonial Fleet's future in this galaxy. They'd come here as refugees, as survivors desperately seeking sanctuary. But the galaxy wasn't offering sanctuary. It was offering war, manipulation, and impossible choices. So be it. The colonials had survived one genocide. They could survive whatever this galaxy threw at them. All batteries, fire at will, Adama commanded. Show them what the Colonial Fleet can do. The first colonial salvo caught the separatist formation by surprise. Galactica's main batteries, massive kinetic cannons designed to punch through silent base stars, spat tungsten-tipped shells at relativistic velocities. The projectiles crossed the distance in seconds, impacting Lucrehulk shields with devastating force. The energy barriers flickered, overloaded by the sheer kinetic mass colonial weapons delivered. These weren't the refined energy weapons this galaxy's military forces used. They were brutal, primitive by galactic standards, and utterly effective against shields designed to dissipate energy rather than absorb solid matter traveling at significant fractions of light speed. Two separatist battleships lost shield cohesion, their dorsal sections erupting in silent explosions as colonial shells tore through unprotected hull plating. Atmosphere vented into space in frozen plumes, and secondary detonations rippled through their superstructures. Direct hits, tactical reported, surprise evident in the officer's voice. Their defensive systems weren't calibrated for kinetic impactors. "We're getting through, sir." On the tactical display, Captain Syndulla watched with undisguised amazement. "Commander, that's... I've never seen anyone breach separatist shields that easily. How much mass are your weapons throwing?" "Enough," Adama replied, watching his Vipers engage the swarms of droid starfighters now pouring from the Lucrehulk launch bays. The angular, tri-armed fighters moved with mechanical precision, their formations perfect, their targeting absolutely coordinated. Against most opponents, that discipline would be overwhelming. Against colonial pilots who'd spent months fighting Cylon raiders, machines that adapted, learned, and coordinated through wireless networks, the droid fighters were almost familiar. "Apollo, Galactica," Adama transmitted. "Those droid fighters coordinate through a central control signal. Take out their command ship and the rest should go offline." "Copy that, Galactica," Lee Adama responded, his Viper banking hard through a storm of blaster fire. "Any idea which one's the command vessel?" Ahsoka stepped forward, her eyes closed, her expression distant. When she spoke, her voice carried absolute certainty. "The central battleship, the one hanging back from the main formation. It's broadcasting constantly. I can feel the signal through the Force, like static, thousands of artificial minds receiving instructions." "You can sense machines?" Colonel Tai asked incredulously. "I can sense the absence of life," Ahsoka replied. "Those droids aren't alive, but they create a void where living Force signatures should be. The command ship is a dead zone surrounded by smaller voids." Adama didn't waste time questioning metaphysics he didn't understand. "All Vipers, new target, central separatist vessel. Concentrate fire on that ship's command structure. We take it down, the whole droid network collapses." The colonial fighter wings altered course, 20 Vipers breaking from defensive positions to execute a coordinated strike. They flew through waves of droid starfighters, their superior piloting and desperate experience showing through. These weren't academy-trained pilots following doctrine, these were survivors who'd learned to fly on instinct, who made decisions measured in milliseconds because hesitation meant death. Starbuck's voice cut through the wireless, fierce and alive. "Galactica, Starbuck. I've got a shot on the command vessel's bridge. Requesting nuclear ordnance authorization." The CIC fell silent. Nuclear weapons were the Colonial Fleet's ultimate trump card, devastating firepower held in reserve for situations where conventional weapons wouldn't suffice. They'd used nukes sparingly since the Exodus began, each warhead precious and irreplaceable. But this situation was deteriorating rapidly. The Separatist fleet was regrouping, the Imperial Star Destroyer was trading fire with multiple targets, and the rebel vessels were being pushed back by sheer numerical superiority. President Roslin's voice came through the secure channel, steady despite the chaos. "Commander, If Captain Thrace believes nuclear ordnance is necessary, I'll authorize it. But understand, once we reveal those capabilities, every faction in this galaxy will know we have them. I know, Adama replied. But we're out of options. If we don't stop these droids now, they'll overrun the civilian fleet. He keyed the tactical channel. Starbuck, Galactica. You are cleared to arm nuclear ordnance. One warhead, targeted strike on the command vessel's central core. Make it count. Gladly, sir. Starbuck out. Captain Syndulla grabbed Adama's arm, her expression alarmed. Commander, did she say nuclear weapons? As in atomic fission warheads? Thermonuclear fusion devices, actually, Adama corrected. Why? Because this galaxy outlawed those weapons millennia ago. The radiation, the environmental damage, nuclear weapons are considered barbaric, weapons of last resort used only by the most desperate or evil civilizations. Then I guess that makes us desperate, Ty said. Welcome to colonial warfare, Captain. On the main display, Starbuck's Viper broke from the formation, accelerating toward the central Lucrehulk with reckless speed. Droid fighters swarmed after her, their blaster fire painting space with green energy bolts. She jinked, rolled, dove through impossible angles that should have torn her Viper apart from G-forces alone. Colonial pilots flew without inertial dampeners, without the gravity compensation systems galactic vessels employed. They felt every maneuver, every acceleration, their bodies pushed to human limits by the brutal physics of space combat. Ordnance armed, Starbuck transmitted, her voice strained by G-forces. Fox 3, bird away. The nuclear warhead separated from her Viper, its small rocket motor igniting to drive it toward the Lucrehulk command ship. Starbuck pulled hard, maximum thrust away from the impact zone, her Viper's engines screaming as she fought to clear the blast radius. The warhead penetrated the Lucrehulk's weakened shields, still disrupted from Galactica's kinetic bombardment, and detonated inside the vessel's central core. For an instant, a miniature sun blazed in the darkness of space. The fusion reaction consumed the battleship from within, its hull peeling away like paper in a firestorm. The electromagnetic pulse radiated outward in an expanding sphere, and every droid starfighter within 10 kilometers simply stopped functioning, their primitive processors fried by the nuclear burst, their coordination network severed. Hundreds of droid fighters went dark, tumbling through space as lifeless metal. The surviving Lucrehulks faltered, their formations breaking as their coordination collapsed. Without central command, the Separatist fleet's tactical precision evaporated. All batteries, concentrated fire, Adama ordered. Hit them while they're disorganized. Galactica's guns roared again, joined now by the Imperial Star Destroyer's turbolasers and the rebel vessel's proton torpedoes. The combined firepower was devastating. 3 more Lucrehulks shattered under the assault, their ancient hulls unable to withstand the coordinated attack. The remaining Separatist vessels began a desperate retreat, their jump drives spooling up for emergency hyperspace transit. Within minutes, the battle was over. The surviving Separatist vessels vanished into hyperspace, leaving debris fields and dying ships in their wake. Colonial Vipers conducted sweep patterns, confirming no remaining threats, while damage control teams assessed Galactica's condition. Damage report, Adama demanded. Minor hull breaches on decks 7 and 11, Ty reported. No casualties. Point defense systems held. The Vipers took some hits, 3 birds heavily damaged, but all pilots recovered safely. Ammunition expenditure is significant. We're down to 60% conventional ordnance, and we just used one of our 17 remaining nuclear warheads. Adama nodded, absorbing the information. They'd won, but at cost. Every bullet spent, every missile fired, brought them closer to the day when Galactica's magazines would be empty and they'd face enemies with nothing but harsh language. Incoming transmission from the Imperial vessel, Duala announced. Captain Sword again. Sword's hologram materialized, and for the first time, the Imperial officer looked genuinely shaken. Commander Adama, that was. I must report to my superiors immediately. The use of nuclear weapons, the effectiveness of your kinetic bombardment, this changes several strategic assessments. I strongly recommend we continue our earlier discussions about cooperation. The Empire could benefit greatly from understanding your military capabilities, and you clearly need allies in this galaxy. Before Adama could respond, Ahsoka spoke quietly from beside the tactical display. He's afraid. I can sense it through the Force. That Inquisitor reported your refugees as a potential asset. Now Sword is reporting you as a potential threat. The Empire's assessment of the Colonial Fleet just shifted dramatically. Good, Adama said. Let them be afraid. It might make them think twice before trying to intimidate us. He addressed Sword's hologram. Captain, we defended ourselves against hostile forces. If that demonstration concerns the Empire, perhaps the Empire should reconsider any plans that involve coercing us into compliance. Sword's expression hardened. Commander, I would advise against threatening Imperial interests. Your nuclear weapons may be effective against antiquated separatist vessels, but they would be far less effective against modern Imperial warships. I will convey your independence to my superiors. But I suspect they will be less understanding than I have been. The transmission ended abruptly, and Adama turned to find Captain Syndulla and her companions watching him with expressions that mixed respect and concern. That was either very brave or very foolish, Syndulla said. You just showed the Empire that you have weapons they consider taboo and the willingness to use them. They won't forget that. Neither will the rebellion, Captain Rex added, though his tone suggested approval rather than criticism. You fight like soldiers who've seen hell and decided they're not going back without a fight. I respect that. Ahsoka moved closer to Adama, her voice pitched for his ears only. Commander, there's something you should know. That separatist attack, it wasn't random. I sensed the Force being manipulated during the battle, felt strings being pulled. Someone orchestrated this entire situation. The question is whether it was the Empire testing you, or someone else entirely. Someone else? Adama asked. Who else has that kind of power? The Sith, Ahsoka replied. The Emperor is a Sith Lord, but he's not the only Force user with dark intentions. And the way those separatist vessels appeared, the timing, the target selection, it all feels like a Sith manipulation. They love creating chaos, forcing impossible choices, seeing how people react under pressure. Adama felt exhaustion settling into his bones. They'd been in this galaxy for less than a day, and already they'd fought a battle, alienated an empire, and potentially drawn the attention of mystical Dark Lords who manipulated events through invisible energy fields. The silence seemed almost straightforward by comparison. Madam President, Adama transmitted to Colonial 1, I think we need to accelerate our repair schedule. I want FTL capability restored within 24 hours, regardless of Chief Tyrole's estimates. We may need to leave this system in a hurry. Agreed, Roslin replied. Commander, the civilian fleet is asking questions. They saw the nuclear detonation, and they're frightened. They want to know if we're safe, if we found sanctuary, or if we're just jumping from one war into another. Tell them the truth, Adama said wearily. We're refugees in an unfamiliar galaxy, surrounded by factions we don't understand, trying to survive another day. It's the same situation we've been in since the silent attack. Nothing's changed except the names of the people shooting at us. That's a pretty bleak assessment, Commander. It's an honest one. Syndulla cleared her throat diplomatically. Commander Adama, I know this isn't the best timing, but the Rebel Alliance would still like to discuss potential cooperation. What you just demonstrated, your combat effectiveness, your independence, your willingness to fight when cornered, those are qualities we desperately need. And we can offer you something the Empire can't, genuine alliance without strings attached. Captain Syndulla, Adama said carefully, I appreciate your position, but my fleet has been fighting for months. My people are exhausted, our resources are depleted, and we're stranded in a galaxy we don't understand. Before I commit to any alliance, I need time to assess our situation, to repair our ships, and to figure out where the hell we go from here. I understand. But time is something you may not have much of. The Empire will report this incident up their chain of command. Within days, possibly hours, you'll have high-ranking Imperial officials demanding answers. If you wait too long to choose allies, the choice may be made for you. Ahsoka placed a gentle hand on Syndulla's arm. Hera, he's right to be cautious. The Colonial Fleet has been through trauma we can barely imagine. Pushing them toward alliance before they're ready will only breed resentment. She turned to Adama. Commander, the Rebel Alliance can provide you with something immediately useful, information. Star charts, political maps, safe havens where you could resupply without Imperial interference. No strings attached, no obligations. Just information that might help you survive. Adama considered this. Information was always valuable, especially when operating in hostile territory with incomplete intelligence. What do you want in return? Permission to study your FTL technology, Ahsoka said frankly. Not to steal it or replicate it, just to understand how it works. Your jump drives operate on principles this galaxy's scientists abandoned or never discovered. That knowledge could save lives, could help refugees escape Imperial persecution. We'd share any discoveries with you, of course. It was a reasonable offer, more reasonable than anything the Empire had proposed. But Adama had learned long ago that reasonable offers often concealed unreasonable obligations. I'll discuss it with my senior staff and President Roslin. You'll have an answer within 12 hours. That's all we ask, Syndulla said. She glanced at the tactical display, where Colonial Vipers were still conducting patrol patterns around the debris field. Commander, one more thing. Your pilots, they fly without computer assistance, without guidance systems, without any of the automation galactic vessels rely on. How do they maintain such precision? Training, Adama replied simply. And desperation. When you're fighting for the survival of your entire species, you learn to be precise or you die. I'd like to meet them, Captain Rex said suddenly. You're pilots, you're Marines, soldiers who've seen what you've seen and survived. I've fought in wars across the galaxy, but I've never met refugees who fight like you do. Like you've got nothing left to lose except each other. That's exactly what we have, Adama said quietly. Each other. It's all we've got left. As the rebel delegation prepared to depart, returning to their vessels to await Adama's decision, Lieutenant Gaeta approached with a datapad, his expression troubled. Commander, I've been analyzing the battle data. Those separatist vessels, their appearance coordinates, their tactical doctrine, their target selection, all of it suggests careful planning. Someone knew where we'd be, when the Imperial and Rebel forces would be present, and exactly how to create maximum chaos. Ahsoka suggested the same thing. She thinks it was orchestrated by these Sith she mentioned. Sir, there's more. I cross-referenced the energy signatures from those vessels against the background radiation of our arrival. There are similarities, like whoever brought the separatists here used similar dimensional manipulation techniques to whatever brought us here. Adama felt cold settle in his chest. Are you saying someone deliberately pulled us into this galaxy? I'm saying it's possible. The odds of our FTL malfunction occurring naturally, at that precise moment, in a way that deposited us in this specific system where multiple factions would immediately detect us, the probabilities are astronomical. It's more likely someone was watching for dimensional anomalies and manipulated ours to bring us here. Why? What would anyone gain from that? Gaeta shook his head. I don't know, sir. But someone went to a lot of trouble to put us in this position. And that means we're not random refugees stumbling into someone else's war. We're pieces on a board we can't see, playing a game we don't understand. Adama looked out at the stars, alien constellations, unfamiliar patterns, a galaxy that operated on rules the 12 colonies had never imagined. Somewhere out there, someone had reached across dimensional barriers to drag the Colonial Fleet into this mess. Whether it was the Empire, the Rebellion, these mystical Sith, or some other player entirely, Adama didn't know. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty: the Colonial Fleet had just become far more important to this galaxy's power players than simple refugees had any right to be. And that meant the real test was only beginning. Chief Galen Tyrol stood in Galactica's main engineering bay, staring at the FTL drive with the expression of a man being asked to rebuild a pyramid with toothpicks. Around him, his engineering team worked frantically, trying to fabricate replacement components from materials that weren't quite right, using tools designed for different specifications, attempting to repair technology that depended on principles this galaxy's physics didn't seem to acknowledge. "Chief, we've got a problem," Specialist Callie Henderson called from inside the FTL core housing. "The dimensional coils are showing fractal damage, like something tore through the quantum field structure when we made that jump. I've never seen degradation like this. Can you repair it?" Tyrol asked, already knowing the answer. "Not with what we have. These coils require thallium-enriched superconductors manufactured in zero-gravity foundries. We don't have the materials, the equipment, or the time." Callie emerged from the access hatch, her face smudged with grease and frustration. "Chief, I can patch it enough to maybe get one more jump, maybe two if we're lucky. But after that, the FTL is dead until we can properly remanufacture these components." Tyrol rubbed his face, feeling the weight of the entire fleet pressing down on his shoulders. "How long for a patch job?" 36 hours minimum. And that's if nothing else breaks while we're working. We don't have 36 hours. Commander wants us jump capable in 24. Then Commander wants a miracle, Chief. I'm an engineer, not a priest. Tyrol was about to respond when an unfamiliar voice spoke from behind them. "Perhaps I can help." Both Colonials spun to find a figure in mechanics coveralls approaching, one of the rebel delegation, though not one of the three who'd met with Commander Adama. This was a droid, humanoid in configuration, golden-plated, moving with precise mechanical grace. Behind him came Captain Syndulla, an Amon Calamari officer whose salmon-colored skin and bulbous eyes marked him as distinctly non-human. "Chief Tyrol," Syndulla said, "this is C-3PO, protocol droid and occasional technical consultant. And this is Admiral Radis of the Rebel Fleet. Commander Adama granted us permission to inspect your FTL systems, purely observational, with your supervision." Tyrol glanced at the Marine standing guard, who nodded confirmation. "All right, but touch nothing without asking. This equipment is irreplaceable." The droid, C-3PO, approached the exposed FTL core with what could only be described as fascination. "Oh my! This is quite extraordinary. The quantum field manipulation, the dimensional folding mechanics, I've never encountered anything like this in over 6 million forms of communication and technical databases. It's colonial technology," Tyrol said defensively. "Developed over centuries of space travel." "Indeed, and remarkably elegant in its brutality," Admiral Radis observed, his voice carrying a burbling quality that the translation protocol smoothed into comprehensible speech. "You don't navigate hyperspace at all, do you? You simply force a hole through dimensional barriers and transit instantly to your destination. Astonishing. And horrifically dangerous if the calculations are even slightly incorrect." "We've been jumping for months without incident," Callie protested. "Until now," C-3PO noted, examining the fractal damage with sensors built into his optical units. "Oh dear. The dimensional membrane has been severely compromised. I'm afraid this drive experienced something far beyond normal operational stress. It's as if you attempted to jump through solid matter, or perhaps through something that doesn't exist in normal spacetime at all." Tyrol and Callie exchanged glances. That description matched exactly what they'd felt during the jump that brought them here, the sense of reality tearing, of passing through something that resisted their transit. "Can you help us fix it?" Tyrol asked bluntly. Radis studied the drive core carefully, his large eyes taking in details with engineer's precision. "The damage is extensive, but not irreparable. However, you're correct that you lack the materials for proper reconstruction. What you need is a temporary solution, something to stabilize the dimensional coils long enough for controlled jumps without risking catastrophic failure. We tried that, Callie said. Everything we've fabricated just doesn't interface properly with the quantum fields. Because you're trying to use materials from this galaxy that operate on fundamentally different physical principles, C-3PO explained. Your technology doesn't use midichlorians, doesn't interact with the Force, doesn't acknowledge certain quantum realities that permeate this dimensional space. The incompatibility is causing cascade failures in your repairs. MIDI what? Tyrol asked. A microscopic life form that exists in all living cells and mediates interaction with the Force, the droid explained. Your materials, your technology, comes from a universe where these particles don't exist. Introducing them to local materials creates quantum incompatibilities. That's insane, Callie muttered. Physics doesn't work that way. In your universe, perhaps not, Radis said. But you're not in your universe anymore, Chief Tyrol. Here, the laws of physics include variables you never had to account for. Your FTL drive is trying to operate in an environment its design never anticipated. Tyrol felt his stomach sink. If the Admiral was right, if the fundamental physics of this galaxy were incompatible with colonial technology, then every repair they attempted would face similar problems. The Vipers, the weapons systems, even basic life support, everything could start failing as the laws of this universe gradually degraded machinery designed for different rules. So what do we do? Tyrol asked quietly. Just wait until everything breaks down. No, Radis replied. You adapt. You learn to work with this galaxy's physics instead of against them. And in the short term, you accept help from those who understand local conditions. He pulled a small device from his belt, a cylindrical object covered in alien characters and blinking indicators. This is a quantum stabilizer, designed for hyperspace drive maintenance. It won't repair your FTL, but it will create a stable field buffer that prevents further degradation while you work. Think of it as a bandage that keeps the wound from getting worse. Tyrol took the device cautiously, examining it with professional skepticism. And in exchange for this help, Admiral Radis would like to observe your repair process, Syndulla said. Not to steal your technology, the rebellion has no interest in dimensional transit drives that might tear our ships apart, but to understand the principles involved. Knowledge for its own sake, Chief. That's all we're asking. It was a reasonable request, and Tyrol knew Commander Adama had already approved rebel observation. More importantly, they needed help. Pride was a luxury the Colonial Fleet couldn't afford. All right, Tyrol said. But my people do the actual repairs. You can watch, you can advise, but colonial hands only on colonial equipment. Agreed, Radis said, and something in his tone suggested genuine respect. As the mixed engineering team began working, Tyrol found himself grudgingly impressed by the rebel officer's knowledge. Radis understood quantum mechanics in ways that colonial science had only theorized, and C-3PO's database contained technical specifications for propulsion systems across thousands of civilizations. Between their expertise and colonial practical experience, they began making progress that would have taken Tyrol's team days to achieve alone. Meanwhile, in Galactica's CIC, Commander Adama faced a different kind of problem. The Imperial Star Destroyer had withdrawn to long-range patrol distance, but it hadn't left the system. Captain Sword was clearly waiting for orders from higher authority, and Adama could only imagine what those orders might entail once the Empire fully processed what had happened. Sir, Lieutenant Gaeta reported, I'm picking up another hyperspace emergence. Single contact, smaller than the Star Destroyer but heavily armed according to configuration analysis. It's broadcasting Imperial codes, Priority 1 clearance, command level authority. Identification. Translating now, it's identifying itself as the Imperial Corvette Scythe, personal transport of Grand Moff Tarkin. Colonel Tai whistled low. Sounds important. Grand Moff is the highest civilian military rank in the Empire, Ahsoka explained. She'd remained aboard Galactica at Adama's request, her insights into Force users too valuable to dismiss. There are only a handful of Grand Moffs, each controlling entire sectors. If Tarkin himself is here, the Empire is taking your arrival very seriously. Incoming transmission, Duala announced. It's not from the Corvette, it's from the Star Destroyer. Captain Sword is requesting immediate communication with you, Commander. He says Grand Moff Tarkin will be arriving aboard Galactica within the hour for formal negotiations. Adama's jaw tightened. Did he ask permission for this visit? No, sir. The message was phrased as a statement of fact, not a request. Typical Imperial arrogance, Ty muttered. Adama considered his options. He could refuse the meeting, but that would likely escalate tensions into open conflict. He could accept, but allowing a high-ranking Imperial official aboard Galactica felt like inviting a viper into his home. On the other hand, this Grand Moff might have authority to make decisions that Captain Sword couldn't, including decisions about whether the Colonial Fleet lived or died. Respond to Captain Sword, Adama ordered. Grand Moff Tarkin is welcome aboard Galactica for negotiations. Standard diplomatic protocols, he may bring 2 aides, unarmed, restricted to designated areas. And Duala, make sure President Roslin is informed. I want her present for this meeting. Aye, sir. 45 minutes later, an Imperial shuttle docked with Galactica's starboard bay. The Marines positioned around the hangar stood at rigid attention as the boarding ramp descended and 3 figures emerged. The man leading them was tall, gaunt, with sharp features that suggested aristocratic breeding and absolute confidence. He wore a gray Imperial uniform adorned with rank insignia that spoke to power beyond mere military authority. His eyes swept the hangar bay with cold assessment, cataloging every detail, every weakness, every potential advantage. Behind him came 2 officers, one the same Lieutenant Commander Vex who'd accompanied the first inspection team, and the other a woman in black whose presence immediately set off warning bells. She moved like the Inquisitor had, with predatory grace, and Adama caught Ahsoka tensing beside him. Another Force user, Ahsoka whispered. Not an Inquisitor, but something else. Imperial intelligence, probably, an operative trained to sense deception. Grand Moff Tarkin approached with measured steps, stopping precisely at the appropriate distance for formal military greeting. When he spoke, his voice carried cultured authority and barely concealed disdain. Commander William Adama. I am Grand Moff Wilhuff Tarkin, Over-Sector Governor of the Outer Rim Territories. I have traveled here personally to address the situation your arrival has created. Welcome aboard the Battlestar Galactica, Grand Moff, Adama replied formally. This is President Laura Roslin, civilian leader of the Colonial Fleet. Roslin had arrived moments before, dressed in her formal presidential attire, projecting strength despite the exhaustion Adama knew she carried. Grand Moff Tarkin. I hope this meeting proves productive for both our peoples. Tarkin's lips curved in something that might have been a smile but held no warmth. That depends entirely on your willingness to cooperate, Madam President. The Empire has very specific concerns about your fleet's presence in our galaxy, and I am here to resolve those concerns one way or another. Perhaps we should discuss this in more comfortable surroundings, Adama suggested. My wardroom is available. Lead on, Commander. As they walked through Galactica's corridors, Adama noticed Tarkin observing everything with the same cold precision he'd shown in the hangar bay. The man missed nothing, not the worn equipment, not the exhausted crew, not the signs of battle damage hastily repaired. He was building a comprehensive assessment, cataloging the Colonial Fleet's strengths and vulnerabilities with ruthless efficiency. They settled in the wardroom, Tarkin sitting with regal bearing while his aides stood at attention behind him. President Roslin sat across from the Grand Moff, Adama and Ty flanking her, with Ahsoka standing discreetly to the side. Tarkin wasted no time on pleasantries. Let me be direct, Commander, Madam President. Your fleet presents the Empire with both opportunity and threat. The opportunity is obvious. You possess technology that operates on principles unknown to our science. The threat is equally clear. You possess weapons we considered barbaric and obsolete, yet you wield them with devastating effectiveness. We're refugees, not a threat, Rosalind said firmly. We arrived here by accident, not by choice. So you claim. Yet within hours of your arrival, you've engaged in military action using nuclear weapons, demonstrated technological capabilities that defy our understanding, and established contact with rebel terrorists. These are not the actions of simple refugees, Madam President. We defended ourselves against hostile forces, Adama interjected. And we've spoken with multiple factions to understand the political situation we've landed in. Neither action constitutes aggression toward the Empire. Tarkin leaned back slightly, steepling his fingers. Commander, I am a practical man. I understand that you're operating from a position of desperation and limited information. What concerns me is not your past actions, but your future choices. The galaxy is at war, a war between order and chaos, between imperial stability and rebel terrorism. In such times, there is no neutrality. You will align with the Empire, or you will be treated as enemies of the Empire. There is no third option. We've heard this speech before, Tai said bluntly. From the rebel delegation, from Captain Sword. Everyone seems to think we have to pick sides in someone else's war. Because you do, Colonel, Tarkin replied. The rebellion will tell you stories of imperial oppression, of tyranny and brutality. They will appeal to your emotions, to your sense of justice. What they won't tell you is that before the Empire, this galaxy was drowning in chaos. The Republic was corrupt, inefficient, paralyzed by bureaucracy and infighting. The Clone Wars killed trillions. The Empire brought peace, ordered, structured, enforced peace. At what cost? Rosalind asked quietly. At the cost of freedom for those who would abuse it, Tarkin answered without hesitation. Democracy failed this galaxy, Madam President. It failed because most beings are incapable of governing themselves responsibly. They need order, need structure, need authority that acts decisively rather than debates endlessly. The Empire provides that authority. And anyone who disagrees gets destroyed, Ahsoka said, speaking for the first time. Like Alderaan. Like Geonosis. Like dozens of worlds the Empire has sterilized to maintain order. Tarkin's gaze shifted to her with reptilian coldness. Ah, the Jedi sympathizer. I wondered when you would reveal yourself. Tell me, are you one of the survivors Vader hasn't located yet? Or perhaps a failed Padawan who never completed training before your precious order fell? I'm someone who knows what the Empire really is, Ahsoka replied steadily. And I'm here to make sure the Colonial Fleet understands what they're dealing with before they make choices they can't undo. Noble sentiments, Tarkin said dismissively. He returned his attention to Adama and Rosalind. Let me make the Empire's position absolutely clear. We are willing to provide your fleet with everything you need, fuel, supplies, medical care, sanctuary worlds where your people can settle and rebuild. We will even assist in repairing your vessels using Imperial technology and resources. In exchange, we require 3 things. Which are? Adama asked. First, complete technical specifications for your FTL drive system. Second, military cooperation, your vessels and personnel serving alongside Imperial forces when called upon. Third, formal acknowledgement of Imperial sovereignty and your fleet status as Imperial subjects. Tarkin paused, letting that sink in. These terms are non-negotiable. You're asking us to surrender our independence, Rosalind said flatly. I'm offering you survival, Tarkin corrected. Your fleet is damaged, your resources depleted, your people exhausted. How long do you think you'll last in this galaxy without powerful allies? The Empire can protect you, can provide for you, can give your people the stability they desperately need. All we ask in return is loyalty. You're asking for everything that makes us who we are, Adama said quietly. Our technology, our freedom, our right to determine our own path. That's not an offer, Grand Moff. That's extortion. Tarkin's expression hardened. Call it what you will, Commander. But understand this, I have been authorized by the Emperor himself to secure your cooperation by whatever means necessary. If you refuse these terms, the Empire will be forced to consider you hostile elements. And hostile elements in Imperial space are eliminated with extreme prejudice. The temperature in the wardroom seemed to drop. The threat was naked now, stripped of diplomatic niceties. Submit or be destroyed. Choose the Empire or die. President Roslin met Tarkin's gaze without flinching. Grand Moff Tarkin, the Colonial Fleet survived the complete destruction of our civilization. We've endured months of running, of fighting, of watching our people die one by one. We've faced extinction and refused to surrender. Do you really think threats will work on us now? I think you're too intelligent to let pride destroy what remains of your people, Tarkin replied. I'm offering you a future, Madam President. Whether that future includes your civilization's survival or simply your memory as a footnote in Imperial history is entirely up to you. He stood, his aides moving with him. I will give you 12 hours to consider the Empire's terms. During that time, the Imperial blockade of this system will remain in effect. Any attempt to leave will be considered an act of war. Choose wisely. As Tarkin departed, leaving behind the echo of his ultimatum, Adama and Roslin remained seated, the weight of impossible choices pressing down on them. So, Tai said finally, how do we tell the entire Colonial Fleet that their choices are slavery or death? We don't, Adama replied. Because those aren't the only choices. There's always a third option. We just have to find it. The wardroom remained silent for a long moment after Tarkin's departure. Adama stared at the table, his mind running through tactical scenarios, each one bleaker than the last. An Imperial Star Destroyer could reduce Galactica to scrap in minutes if it came to open combat. The civilian fleet wouldn't survive the first salvo. 12 hours, President Roslin said quietly. That's not much time to find a miracle. It's more time than we usually get, Colonel Tai observed grimly. We've made impossible choices before on shorter timelines. Ahsoka moved closer to the table, her expression troubled. Commander, President Roslin, you need to understand something about the Empire's ultimatums. They're designed to make you feel trapped, to convince you there are only two options. But Tarkin didn't come here just to threaten you. If the Empire simply wanted to destroy your fleet, they would have already done it. The fact that he's offering terms means you have leverage you don't realize. What leverage? Adama asked. We're one damaged battlestar and a handful of civilian ships against an empire that controls thousands of worlds. You have technology they don't understand and can't predict, Ahsoka replied. You have nuclear weapons in a galaxy that outlawed them millennia ago. You demonstrated combat effectiveness that surprised their military doctrine. And most importantly, you've proven you won't be easily intimidated. The Empire respects strength, Commander. They may hate you for it, but they respect it. She's right, Captain Syndulla's voice came from the hatchway. The Twi'lek pilot had remained near CIC during Tarkin's visit, monitoring the situation. Grand Moffs don't personally travel to remote systems for simple refugee situations. Tarkin came here because the Emperor wants your FTL technology badly enough to authorize high-level negotiations. That means you have something they desperately want. And what happens when we refuse to give it to them? Roslin asked. They'll try to take it by force, Syndulla admitted. But force comes with costs. Every vessel they dedicate to subduing your fleet is a vessel they can't use against the rebellion. Every resource spent on you is a resource not spent maintaining control over their empire. The Emperor is pragmatic. If acquiring your technology costs more than it's worth, he'll find another approach. Adama stood, pacing to the viewport where stars shone with alien patterns. So we make it cost too much. We show them that conquering the Colonial Fleet would be more trouble than it's worth. That's a dangerous game, Ty warned. Push too hard and they'll decide to just eliminate us as an example. Maybe, Adama acknowledged. But what's our alternative? Accept Tarkin's terms and become Imperial subjects? Watch everything we've fought for get absorbed into their empire? He turned back to face the room. No. We didn't survive the Cylons just to surrender our freedom to the first tyrant we meet in a new galaxy. Then what's the play? Roslin asked. Before Adama could answer, Lieutenant Gaeta's voice crackled over the intercom. Commander Adama to CIC. Priority situation, we're detecting massive hyperspace disturbances throughout the system. Multiple contacts emerging, sir, I'm reading over 50 vessels. Configuration analysis suggests diverse origins, not a unified fleet. Adama was moving before Gaeta finished speaking, Ty and the others close behind. They reached CIC to find organized chaos, tactical displays lighting up with contact markers that seemed to multiply by the second. Report, Adama demanded. Sir, we've got vessels appearing from at least a dozen different factions, Gaeta explained, his fingers flying over his console. Some match Rebel Alliance profiles, others are configurations I've never seen. There are freighters, warships, even what looks like diplomatic transports. They're all broadcasting on open channels, requests for communication, demands for identification, territorial warnings. It's like half the galaxy just jumped into this system simultaneously. On the main display, the tactical situation had transformed from a tense standoff into a chaotic convergence. The Imperial Star Destroyer was repositioning, clearly as surprised as Galactica by the sudden arrivals. The rebel vessels had moved into defensive formations, and now dozens of new contacts were establishing positions throughout the system. What the hell is going on? Ty muttered. Ahsoka moved to study the tactical display, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding. Word spread. The rumors about your arrival, about your technology, about the nuclear weapons, every intelligence network in the sector must have picked it up. These aren't coordinated arrivals. These are independent factions all coming to investigate the same thing, you. We're that interesting? Adama asked. You're unprecedented, Syndulla replied, also studying the display. A fleet from another universe with technology that operates outside galactic norms. Every power broker, every criminal syndicate, every independent faction with ambitions beyond their current status, they'd all want to know what you represent. Some want your technology. Others want to recruit you. And some probably just want to prevent anyone else from getting you. Incoming transmission, Duala reported. Multiple transmissions, actually. I'm getting hails from, looks like 17 different sources. All requesting communication with the unknown fleet's commanding officer. Priority the strongest signal, Adama ordered. That would be, a vessel identifying itself as the Halo of Nal Huda. They're claiming to represent the Hutt cartel and demanding, not requesting, demanding, that you acknowledge their territorial claim on this system. The Hutts, Captain Rex's voice came from behind them, he'd accompanied Syndulla to CIC. Crime lords who control massive portions of the Outer Rim. They're not exactly diplomatic. Another contact lit up on the display, this one breaking from the mass of arrivals to accelerate directly toward Galactica. It was sleek, predatory, its configuration suggesting a heavily modified freighter optimized for speed and firepower. Sir, that contact is on an intercept course, Tactical reported. They're broadcasting, it's a bounty hunter guild transponder. They're claiming salvage rights on any unaligned vessels in the system. Salvage rights? Ty repeated incredulously. They think they can just claim our ships. In lawless space, might makes right, Ahsoka explained. And technically, this system isn't under any legitimate jurisdiction. The Empire claims it, but dozens of factions would dispute that claim. From a certain perspective, your fleet is unclaimed property in contested space. The situation was spiraling out of control. What had been a tense standoff between three factions had exploded into a chaotic free-for-all with dozens of parties all claiming different rights to the Colonial Fleet. Some wanted alliance, others wanted exploitation, and still others simply wanted to prevent rivals from gaining advantage. "Commander," President Roslin's voice came through secure channel from Colonial 1, "our civilian ships are reporting being scanned by multiple contacts. Some of the transmissions they're receiving are disturbing. Offers to purchase refugees as labor, threats if we don't acknowledge various territorial claims, even invitations to join criminal organizations." "What's happening?" "The galaxy just discovered we exist," Adama replied grimly. "And everyone wants a piece." Grand Moff Tarkin's corvette was maneuvering now, positioning itself between Galactica and the approaching bounty hunter vessel. A new transmission came through on Imperial frequencies, Tarkin's cultured voice carrying cold fury. "All vessels in this system are hereby ordered to withdraw immediately. This is Imperial space under martial law. Any faction that refuses to comply will be destroyed without further warning." "They can't destroy 50 ships," Gaeta observed. "Can they?" "No," Syndulla said. "But Tarkin's gambling that most of these arrivals won't risk Imperial retaliation. He's trying to reassert control before the situation becomes completely anarchic." But the bounty hunter vessel didn't alter course. If anything, it accelerated, closing distance with Galactica at reckless speed. Its weapons systems began powering up, nothing like the massive firepower of an Imperial Star Destroyer, but more than enough to threaten colonial ships if it got close enough. "They're targeting our civilian fleet," Tactical reported. "Preparing to fire. Launch alert Vipers," Adama ordered immediately. "And get our point defense online. If they fire on our ships, we take them down." But before either Vipers could launch or the bounty hunter could fire, something extraordinary happened. The vessel simply stopped. Not decelerated, stopped, as if it had hit an invisible wall. Its forward momentum killed instantly, its weapon systems powering down, its engines going dark. On the tactical display, Ahsoka smiled slightly. "Cannon." A new vessel appeared on sensors, a modified VCX-100 light freighter, smaller than most of the ships in the system but moving with absolute confidence. It positioned itself between Galactica and the disabled bounty hunter, and a transmission came through on rebel frequencies. "Ghost to Colonial Fleet. Sorry about the mess. We've got your back." "That's the Ghost," Syndulla explained, relief evident in her voice. "My ship. My crew. They just used the Force to disable that bounty hunter's systems, saved you from having to destroy them and potentially starting a shooting war with half the bounty hunter guilds in the sector. Someone used this Force to shut down an entire ship?" Tai asked, incredulous. "A very talented someone," Ahsoka confirmed. "Kanan Jarrus, Jedi Knight, Ghost crew member, and one of the few Force users skilled enough to manipulate technology remotely. He's protecting you, Commander." More transmissions flooded in, the various factions all demanding acknowledgement, all claiming different rights or offering different deals. It was overwhelming, chaotic, exactly the kind of situation that could spark violence with a single miscalculation. And then everything changed again. The Force, that mystical energy Adama didn't fully understand, rippled through the system like a shockwave. Every Force-sensitive being present felt it simultaneously, their expressions shifting to alarm. Ahsoka gasped, stumbling slightly, her hand reaching for support. "What was that?" Adama demanded. "Vader," Ahsoka whispered, her voice carrying old fear, old pain. "Darth Vader. The Emperor's enforcer, the most powerful dark side user in the galaxy. He's coming." A new contact appeared on Drades, massive, angular, radiating menace even through sensor returns. An Imperial Star Destroyer, but different from the one already in system. This one moved with purpose that transcended simple military precision. It carried weight, presence, as if the very space around it bent to acknowledge its passage. "That's the Executor-class Star Destroyer Devastator," Captain Rex said quietly, his weathered face grim. "Vader's personal flagship. Commander, you need to understand, Darth Vader is what the Inquisitor you met was pretending to be. He's death-given form, the Emperor's right hand, a Force user so powerful he can crush Star Destroyers with his mind if he chooses. Can we fight him?" Tai asked. "No," Ahsoka said simply. "You can't fight Vader. You can only survive him. And sometimes not even that." The Devastator's arrival had an immediate effect on the chaotic system. The smaller factions began withdrawing, their vessels jumping to hyperspace in rapid succession. The Hutt cartel's ship reversed course. The bounty hunters scattered. Within minutes, the system had cleared of everyone except Imperial forces, rebel vessels, and the Colonial Fleet. A transmission came through on all frequencies, a voice that carried mechanical breathing, as if filtered through life support systems. When Vader spoke, the words seemed to crush hope itself. "Commander Adama. President Roslin. I am Lord Vader, servant of Emperor Palpatine and executor of Imperial will. You have attracted considerable attention with your arrival. This ends now. You will surrender your vessels and technology to Imperial authority, or I will take them by force. There will be no negotiation, no further warnings. You have 1 hour to comply." The transmission ended, leaving only the sound of mechanical breathing echoing through CIC before cutting to silence. Adama stood frozen, staring at the tactical display where the Devastator held position like a predator perfectly confident in its dominance. Everything in his experience, every tactical instinct, told him they couldn't win this fight. Vader's presence had cleared the system of dozens of factions simply by arriving. That kind of power, whether mystical or purely military, was beyond anything the Colonial Fleet could challenge. "Madam President," Adama said quietly over the secure channel, "I think we're out of options." But Laura Roslin's voice, when it came back, carried steel beneath the exhaustion. "Commander, the colonies had a saying, the only fight you can't win is the one you don't show up for. We've survived this long by refusing to surrender. I'm not starting now. Even if it means the end of the fleet. Even then. Because if we surrender now, we'll spend the rest of our lives as Imperial property, and our children will never know what freedom meant. I'd rather die free than live as a slave." Adama looked around CIC at his crew, exhausted, frightened, but still at their posts, still ready to follow orders even knowing those orders might be their last. He thought of the civilian fleet, 45,000 souls who trusted him to lead them to safety. He thought of Lee flying CAP, of Starbuck's reckless courage, of Tyrol working miracles in engineering. And he thought of the 12 colonies, gone, destroyed, reduced to radioactive ash by enemies who'd given them the same ultimatum Vader just delivered. Surrender or die. The colonies had chosen to fight. They'd lost. But they'd fought. "Saul," Adama said quietly to Tai, "sound action stations throughout the ship. Prepare to engage Imperial forces on my command." "Bill," Tai began. "I know the odds." "Sound action stations." As alarms began blaring through Galactica's corridors, as Vipers launched to form defensive screens, as every weapon system powered up for what might be the Colonial Fleet's last battle, Adama made peace with his choice. They would fight. They would probably lose. But they would go down standing, defending their freedom with their last breath. Because that's what it meant to be colonial. That's what it meant to be human. And no empire, no matter how vast, no matter how powerful, could take that away. The minutes crawled by like hours as Galactica's crew prepared for battle. In the hangar bays, deck crews armed Vipers with every remaining missile, every functioning gun pod. In engineering, Chief Tyrol diverted power from non-essential systems to weapons and engines, pushing the old Battlestar to maximum combat readiness. Throughout the ship, Marines checked weapons and established defensive positions, preparing for potential boarding actions. On the civilian fleet, panic spread like wildfire. Families huddled in cargo holds, parents clutching children, everyone remembering the last time they'd faced an enemy with overwhelming firepower. The silent attack had killed billions in hours. How long would they last against this Darth Vader? President Rosalind broadcast from Colonial 1, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped every heart in the fleet. People of the colonies, I won't lie to you. We face an enemy that demands our surrender, our freedom, our very identity. They believe we'll submit because we're exhausted, because we're outnumbered, because we have nowhere left to run. They're wrong. In Galactica's CIC, Adama listened to Rosalind's speech while monitoring the tactical display. The Devastator held position at the system's edge, not moving, not threatening, simply existing as an inexorable fact. A dozen TIE fighters had launched from its bays, establishing patrol patterns that demonstrated absolute confidence. They weren't preparing for battle. They were waiting for surrender. We are the last survivors of the 12 colonies of Kobol, Rosalind continued, her words echoing through every ship in the fleet. We carry with us the memory of worlds that burned, of loved ones lost, of a civilization that refused to die quietly. Whatever happens in the next hour, let it be said that we faced our fate with courage. Let it be said that we chose freedom over slavery, dignity over survival at any cost. So say we all. So say we all, thousands of voices responded across the fleet, a prayer, a promise, a defiant roar against the darkness. Ahsoka Tano stood near the tactical display, her eyes closed, her expression distant. He's probing, she said quietly. Vader. He's reaching out through the Force, trying to sense your intentions, your weaknesses. He's done this before, psychological warfare, making enemies defeat themselves through fear before the battle even begins. Can you block him? Adama asked. I can try. But Vader's power is immense. Trying to shield your entire fleet from his perception is like trying to hide a bonfire behind a candle. Despite her words, Ahsoka's expression shifted to concentration, and something seemed to settle over CIC, a subtle warmth that pushed back against the cold presence emanating from the Devastator. Captain Syndulla worked at an auxiliary console, coordinating with the rebel vessels scattered through the system. Commander, the Ghost and 3 other rebel ships are moving to support positions near your fleet. We're not much against a Star Destroyer, but every gun counts. Captain, you don't owe us this, Adama said. This is our fight. No, Syndulla replied firmly. This is everyone's fight. The moment you refuse to bow to imperial tyranny, you become part of the rebellion whether you claim the name or not. We stand together or we fall separately. The hour Vader had given them was nearly gone. 53 minutes had passed since his ultimatum, and the tension in CIC had reached breaking point. Every officer stood at their station, hands hovering over controls, waiting for the order that would seal their fate. Then, at 57 minutes, something impossible happened. New contacts appeared on Drades, dozens of them, hundreds, emerging from hyperspace in perfectly coordinated waves. But these weren't Imperial vessels or bounty hunters or criminal syndicates. These were warships, military-grade craft bearing configurations that made Lieutenant Gata's voice crack with disbelief. Sir, I'm reading, this can't be right. I'm reading separatist battleships again. More than before, over 100 contacts. And they're not alone. There are other vessels with them, configurations that match ancient Republic designs, ships that shouldn't exist anymore. On the tactical display, a massive fleet materialized around the Devastator, encircling it, surrounding it, cutting it off from the rest of the Imperial forces in the system. The newcomers' formation was flawless, their positioning speaking to military coordination impossible for supposedly defunct factions. Ahsoka's eyes snapped open, her expression shifting from concentration to shock. That's impossible. Those are Clone Wars-era vessels. The Separatist fleet was dismantled. The Republic Navy was absorbed into the Imperial military. These ships shouldn't exist. Well, they exist now, Tai observed. And they're moving to engage the Devastator. A transmission cut through all frequencies, a voice that carried both mechanical and organic qualities, as if synthesized through damaged vocal systems. When it spoke, every being who'd lived through the Clone Wars felt ice run through their veins. Darth Vader. How far the Chosen One has fallen. Once you fought to bring balance to the Force. Now you serve the very darkness you were meant to destroy. Who is that? Adama demanded. Captain Rex had gone pale, his scarred face slack with recognition and impossible hope. General Grievous. Supreme Commander of the Separatist droid army. But he died. Obi-Wan Kenobi killed him on Utapau 20 years ago. I was there for the aftermath. He can't be alive. Yet someone with his voice commands a fleet, Syndulla said, her own shock evident. Someone who knows Vader personally, who knows about the Chosen One prophecy. Commander, this is either the greatest deception in galactic history or something far stranger is happening. On the tactical display, the Devastator was moving now, not retreating, but repositioning for combat. TIE fighters swarmed from its bays in greater numbers, and the Star Destroyer's weapon systems powered to full capacity. But the attacking fleet had numerical superiority, and their vessels were spreading into attack formations that demonstrated tactical brilliance. Vader's voice cut through the chaos, mechanical breathing preceding words that carried cold fury. Grievous. You are dead. This is some rebel trick, some holographic deception meant to. I am no deception, Lord Vader. I am vengeance for every droid, every separatist, every being your empire has crushed beneath its boot. And I have come to settle old debts. The fleet opened fire. Turbolaser batteries from 100 vessels converged on the Devastator, overwhelming its shields through sheer volume of fire. Droid starfighters, thousands of them, swarmed the Imperial TIE fighters, their numerical advantage turning space into a killing field. The battle was immediate, brutal, and completely unexpected. Sir, Gaeta reported, voice shaking, the attacking fleet is ignoring us completely. They're focused entirely on Imperial forces. It's like we don't exist to them. Someone just gave us a gift, Adama said quietly. Question is, who, and why? His answer came moments later when a new transmission arrived on Colonial Fleet frequencies, encrypted, routed through channels that shouldn't have been accessible to anyone outside their own systems. When Lieutenant Duala decrypted it, the message was brief and cryptic. Commander Adama. You asked the right questions earlier. Why did your FTL malfunction bring you here, to this exact location, at this precise moment? Why did separatist vessels appear when they did? The answer is simple, because I arranged it. I have been manipulating events across dimensional barriers to bring you to this galaxy, to this system, at this exact moment when you would be most useful. I am not your enemy, Commander. I am someone who understands that the Emperor's control over this galaxy must be challenged by forces he cannot predict or control. You represent chaos he cannot calculate. Keep your fleet safe. Repair your systems. And when the time comes, remember that not all manipulations are hostile. The message is signed, Duala said, her voice barely above a whisper. It's signed, a friend from the unknown regions. Adama stared at the message, his mind racing through implications. Someone had deliberately brought them here. Someone with resources vast enough to manipulate dimensional barriers, to coordinate fleet movements across the galaxy, to orchestrate battles involving factions that shouldn't exist. Someone who wanted the Colonial Fleet as a piece on a board far larger than Adama had imagined. It's a trap, Tai said. Has to be. Someone's playing us. Of course they are, Adama agreed. But they're also giving us an opportunity. Look at the tactical board, the Imperials are fully engaged. Tarkin's corvette is withdrawing. The Devastator is fighting for its survival. For the first time since we arrived, no one is paying attention to us. You want to run, Rosalind said over the secure channel, understanding immediately. I want to survive, Adama corrected. Chief Tyrol, this is Adama. Status on FTL repairs. Tyrole's voice came back strained. Commander, we're at maybe 70%. I can give you one jump, maybe two, but after that we'll need to completely rebuild the core. And I can't guarantee the jump will be clean. The quantum stabilizers the rebels provided are helping, but our systems are still degraded. One jump is all we need. Calculate coordinates for somewhere far from here, somewhere the Empire won't immediately follow. Gata, work with Tyrol on navigation. Find us a safe harbor, even if it's temporary. Aye, sir. The battle between the mysterious fleet and the Imperial forces intensified. The Devastator was holding its own, its shields and armor far superior to the older Separatist vessels, but it was taking damage. TIE fighters exploded in silent blooms of fire. Droid starfighters fell in waves but were replaced by seemingly endless reserves. It was the kind of battle that could last hours, and Adama didn't intend to wait around for the outcome. All civilian ships, this is Galactica, Adama transmitted on fleet-wide frequencies. Prepare for emergency FTL jump. Navigation coordinates will be transmitted shortly. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Jump on my command. Ahsoka moved closer to Adama, her expression troubled. Commander, whoever sent that message, they're not doing this out of kindness. You're being positioned, used for purposes you don't understand. I know, Adama replied. But right now, being used by a mysterious manipulator is better than being destroyed by the Empire or enslaved by Lord Vader. We'll figure out the rest later. Right now, we survive. Coordinates calculated, Gata reported. It's a long jump, beyond any Imperial patrol routes we've identified from captured transmissions. There's a nebula cluster that should mask our FTL signature. Not perfect, but it's the best option available. Transmit coordinates to the fleet. All ships prepare to jump on my mark. Captain Syndulla approached, her decision already made. Commander, the Ghost and our support vessels are coming with you. We can help navigate you through the Outer Rim, help you understand the sectors you'll be traveling through. You'd abandon your war? Adama asked. We'd be investing in an ally, Syndulla corrected. The Rebel Alliance is more than one ship, one crew. And having a fleet that can appear anywhere in the galaxy without using hyperspace. That's worth protecting. Through the viewport, the battle raged. The Devastator had destroyed a dozen Separatist vessels, but more kept coming, their coordination suggesting Central Command even more sophisticated than typical droid networks. Vader himself was out there somewhere on that Star Destroyer, fighting enemies he'd thought destroyed decades ago, facing threats that shouldn't exist. And somewhere in the unknown regions, someone was watching all of this unfold, satisfied that their pieces were moving exactly as planned. All ships report ready for jump, Duala announced. Adama took a deep breath, looking around CIC at his crew, at the rebel allies who'd chosen to stand with them, at the tactical display showing a galaxy at war with itself. They'd survived the Silence. They'd survived first contact with the Galactic Empire. They'd even survived the attention of beings who manipulated reality itself through mystical energy fields. They'd survive this too. Somehow. All ships, Adama commanded, his voice carrying throughout the fleet, execute jump. Galactica's FTL drive spooled up, that familiar sound colonial crews had heard hundreds of times, the sound of escape, of survival, of one more day alive. The quantum coils strained, the dimensional barriers thinned, and reality prepared to fold around them one more time. The last thing Adama saw before the jump was the Devastator's hull erupting in explosions as concentrated fire overwhelmed its shields. He caught a glimpse of TIE fighters scattering, of Separatist vessels closing in for the kill, of an impossible battle that would reshape whatever political calculations the Empire had made about the Colonial Fleet. Then space twisted, folded, and the Colonial Fleet vanished from the system as if they'd never existed, leaving behind only debris, mysteries, and the chaos of a battle that would echo through Imperial intelligence reports for years to come. They'd escaped. For now. But Adama knew, they all knew, that eventually they'd have to face the questions they'd been avoiding. Who had brought them here? What did this mysterious manipulator want? And what price would the Colonial Fleet ultimately pay for being pawns in someone else's game? Those were problems for later. Right now, tumbling through the dimensional barriers between one region of space and another, surrounded by his fleet and his people, Commander William Adama allowed himself one moment of relief. They were still alive. Still free. Still fighting. So say we all. The Colonial Fleet emerged from FTL jump into a region of space that looked like the galaxy's forgotten corner. The nebula cluster Gaeta had identified stretched across the viewport, swirling clouds of ionized gas painted in shades of purple and green, shot through with electrical discharges that lit the darkness like distant lightning. It was beautiful in an alien way, and more importantly, it was empty. Jump complete, Gaeta reported, his voice carrying relief. All civilian ships accounted for. No immediate contacts on Drades. The nebula's interference should mask our signatures from long-range Imperial scanners. Adama allowed himself to exhale. They'd made it. Damaged, depleted, but alive. Damage assessment. How did the FTL hold up? Chief Tyrol's voice crackled over the wireless, exhaustion evident in every word. Commander, we're running on prayers and duct tape down here. The quantum coils are degraded to maybe 40% efficiency. Another jump like that and we're looking at catastrophic failure. We need to stop, sir. We need real repairs with real materials, not jury-rigged patches. Understood, Chief. Do what you can with what we have. Adama turned to his tactical officer. Run a full sensor sweep. I want to know everything in this system, planets, stations, resources, threats. Everything. As Galactica's sensors probed the nebula cluster, Adama became aware of Captain Syndulla ascending to the command deck, her rebel colleagues following close behind. The Ghost had made the jump with them, along with 3 other rebel vessels, small ships, but capable, and more importantly, piloted by people who knew this galaxy's navigation hazards. That was impressive flying, Syndulla said. Your FTL jumps are, not subtle. The spatial distortion you create would be detectable across several sectors if not for this nebula's interference. You're going to need to be careful about where you jump. We're used to being careful, Colonel Tai replied. It's all we've done since the silence hit. Captain Rex was studying a datapad, his weathered face creased with concern. Commander, I've been analyzing what just happened back there. That fleet that attacked Vader, that wasn't just repurposed separatist vessels with droid crews. The coordination, the tactics, the way they moved, that required organic command, experienced military minds. Someone is commanding forces that shouldn't exist, using strategies from the Clone Wars era. This General Grievous, Adama said. You saw him die. I saw the aftermath. Obi-Wan Kenobi killed him on Utapau. I've seen holograms of the body, read the after-action reports. There's no way he survived. Rex paused, then added quietly, but I've also learned that in this galaxy, impossible doesn't mean what it used to. The Force, cloning technology, cybernetic enhancement, there are ways to bring people back, or at least create convincing copies. So someone either resurrected a dead separatist general or created a perfect replacement, Tai summarized. And they're using him to attack the Empire while simultaneously orchestrating our arrival in this galaxy. That's a hell of a conspiracy. It's also incredibly dangerous, Ahsoka interjected. She'd been quiet since the jump, her expression distant, troubled. Whoever is behind this, whoever sent that message from the unknown regions, they have resources and knowledge that rival the Emperor himself. They can manipulate dimensional barriers, coordinate fleets across the galaxy, and apparently resurrect or clone legendary military commanders. Commander Adama, you need to understand, you've attracted the attention of powers that play games with star systems as pieces. Then we'll be very careful not to get played, Adama replied. But even as he said it, he knew how hollow the word sounded. They'd already been played, pulled across dimensional barriers, deposited in a conflict zone, positioned as pawns in someone's elaborate scheme. The only question was whether they could turn that positioning to their advantage or whether they'd be sacrificed when their usefulness ended. "Commander," Gaeta called from his station, "sensor sweep is complete. We've got 3 planets in this system, 2 gas giants and 1 terrestrial world. The terrestrial is in the habitable zone, showing breathable atmosphere and water. But sir, there's something else. I'm picking up structure on the planet's surface, too regular to be natural formation." "Civilization?" Adama asked sharply. "Not current. The structure's read as abandoned, possibly ancient. But there's also, it's weird. I'm detecting power signatures, but they're incredibly faint. Like something's running on emergency reserves down there." President Roslin's face appeared on the secure video link. "Commander, our fuel situation is critical. If there's any chance that planet has resources we can use, we need to investigate. And our people need to set foot on solid ground. Morale is at breaking point, they need to feel safe, even if it's just for a few hours." Adama understood. The fleet had been running for months, living in cramped ship quarters, breathing recycled air, never quite escaping the sense of being hunted. A planet, even an empty one, represented something they'd almost forgotten, the possibility of a place to rest. "Launch reconnaissance Raptors," Adama ordered. "Full survey of the planet before we commit any ground forces. I want to know what those power signatures are and whether there are any threats we need to worry about." 2 Raptors launched within minutes, their pilots, including Captain Carl, Hello, Agathon and Lieutenant Sharon, Boomer, Valerie, running sensor sweeps as they descended through the planet's atmosphere. Their reports came back in real time, painting a picture of a world that had once hosted advanced civilization but now stood silent and abandoned. "Galactica, Apollo," Lee Adama's voice transmitted from the lead Raptor. "We're over the main structure complex. It's massive, looks like it was a city once, maybe a research installation. Architecture is unlike anything I've seen, not colonial and not matching any of the galactic designs Captain Syndulla has shown us. Everything's intact but empty, like everyone just left." "Any signs of what happened to them?" Adama asked. "Negative, sir. No bodies, no battle damage, no indication of why this place was abandoned. But those power signatures Gaeta detected, they're coming from a central structure. Looks like a temple or shrine, elevated position overlooking everything else. Permission to land and investigate?" Adama glanced at Ahsoka, who had gone very still, her expression distant. "You're sensing something," he said quietly. "The force is strong there," Ahsoka replied. "Stronger than it should be in an abandoned system. That temple, it's a vergence, a place where the force concentrates naturally. The ancient Jedi used to seek out such places for meditation and training. But this one feels different. Old. Like it predates the Jedi Order itself. Is it dangerous?" "The Force is never inherently dangerous, Commander. But power concentrated in one place can be used, or misused, by those who know how. If I were with your reconnaissance team, I could assess what we're dealing with." "Apollo," Adama transmitted, "hold position. We're sending an additional team down with specialized expertise." He turned to Ahsoka. "You're volunteering. Someone needs to understand what that temple represents. If it's connected to whoever brought you here, we need to know." Ahsoka paused, then added, "I'd like Captain Rex with me. His experience with Force-related sites during the Clone Wars could be valuable." "Agreed. Raptor 3 will transport you down. Apollo, await the second team before entering that temple structure." As Ahsoka and Rex departed for the hangar bay, Captain Syndulla moved closer to the command deck's viewport, staring at the planet below. "Commander, a word of caution. In my experience, ancient temples and abandoned systems are usually abandoned for good reasons. The Old Republic encountered dozens of sites like this: Force Vergences, ancient Sith strongholds, Jedi meditation sanctuaries. Most of them were dangerous even to trained Force users. Are you suggesting we ignore the only potentially useful site in this system? I'm suggesting we proceed very carefully. And I'm offering Ghost Crew support. My partner Kanan is a Jedi Knight. Between him and Ahsoka, you'd have two experienced Force users assessing whatever's down there. Adama considered this. More expertise meant better assessment, but it also meant exposing more people to potential danger. On the other hand, they needed information, needed resources, and needed to understand why this specific system had been their jump destination. Have your Jedi meet with our reconnaissance team on the surface, Adama decided. But make it clear, this is an assessment mission only. No one enters that temple until we know what we're dealing with. The next hour passed with agonizing slowness as the combined team, Colonial pilots, Rebel Force users, and Colonial Marines providing security, established a perimeter around the ancient temple structure. The building was impressive even by galactic standards, massive stone construction rising from a plateau, adorned with carved symbols that predated known galactic languages. Steps led to a grand entrance sealed by doors that hummed with faint energy. Galactica, Ahsoka, the former Jedi's voice transmitted from the planet's surface. This temple is ancient, possibly pre-Republic era, maybe even pre-Rakatan Infinite Empire. The carvings suggest it was built by a Force-sensitive civilization that understood dimensional mechanics. Commander, I think this place was specifically constructed to study or manipulate barriers between realities. In Galactica's CIC, that statement landed like a bomb. Dimensional barriers, Adama repeated. Like the one our FTL drive created when it malfunctioned? Possibly. The Force can be used to perceive and even influence dimensional boundaries. An advanced civilization with deep Force knowledge might have built this temple as a research facility or a gateway. If I'm right, then whoever brought you to this galaxy knew about this place, knew it could help you understand what happened to you. Or it's a trap, Ty muttered. Also possible, Ahsoka agreed over the comm, but if this temple can help you understand your dimensional transit, maybe even repair your FTL drive properly using local physics principles, it's worth investigating. I'm requesting permission to enter with Kanan. We'll proceed cautiously, maintain constant communication. Adama looked around CIC, reading the tension in his crew's faces. They'd jumped blind into this system based on desperation and limited information. Now they were being offered potential answers to questions that had haunted them since arrival. Why were they here? How could they get home? What did this galaxy want from them? Permission granted, Adama said. But Ahsoka, Captain Jarrus, at the first sign of danger, you withdraw immediately. That's an order. Understood, Commander. On the planet's surface, Ahsoka and Kanan Jarrus, a bearded man with the calm confidence of someone who'd faced darkness and survived, approached the temple entrance. The sealed doors responded to their Force presence, ancient mechanisms grinding to life after millennia of silence. Light spilled from within, not artificial illumination, but something organic, as if the building itself was awakening. Here we go, Kanan murmured, his hand resting on his lightsaber hilt. Ahsoka, you feel that? Yes. The Force is alive here, concentrated in ways I've never experienced. It's like the temple itself is sentient, aware of us. They stepped through the entrance into a vast chamber illuminated by crystalline formations that pulsed with soft light. The walls were covered in star maps, not charts of this galaxy, but of others, dimensional coordinates that suggested navigation across realities rather than merely across space. At the chamber's center stood a holographic projection device, dormant but clearly functional. Galactica, we're inside, Ahsoka reported. This place is an archive, a repository of dimensional knowledge. There are star maps here showing dozens of galaxies, maybe hundreds. Someone was charting the multiverse. Can you access their data? Adama asked. Ahsoka approached the central projection device, her hand reaching out tentatively. The moment she touched it, the device activated, and the chamber exploded with light and sound. Holographic images filled the space, galaxies rotating, dimensional barriers illustrated in impossible colors, equations written in languages no one had seen in millennia. And then a voice spoke, not through the comm system, but directly in the minds of everyone present on the planet and aboard Galactica. It was ancient, vast, carrying weight that transcended simple communication. Greetings, travelers from beyond. You have found the archive of the Celestials, constructed eons ago by those who first learned to navigate the spaces between realities. You seek understanding of your transit. We offer knowledge, but knowledge demands price. Are you willing to pay? In CIC, every crew member had frozen, hearing that voice in their heads, feeling its pressure against their consciousness. Adama gripped his command chair, fighting the urge to order immediate evacuation. Who are you? Ahsoka asked the voice, speaking for all of them. We are the archive. We are the memory of those who came before, who learned truth that your civilizations have forgotten. We are the keepers of dimensional law, the guardians of barriers you have crossed. And we are the answer to your questions, Colonial Fleet, if you are brave enough to hear truth that will change everything you believe. President Roslin's face appeared on screen, her expression showing the same mix of fear and fascination that gripped them all. Commander, what do we do? Adama stared at the holographic display showing the temple, where Ahsoka and Kanan stood surrounded by impossible knowledge, where an entity claiming to span dimensions offered understanding at unnamed cost. They'd come to this galaxy searching for survival. They'd found war, manipulation, and powers that operated beyond comprehension. Now they stood at threshold of knowledge that might explain everything, or might destroy them with truth they couldn't handle. Ask your questions, Archive, Adama said finally, his voice carrying to the planet below through technology and perhaps through something more. We're listening. And in the temple's heart, surrounded by star maps showing infinite possibilities across infinite realities, the Archive began to speak. The Archive's voice resonated through dimensions, touching every mind in the Colonial Fleet and aboard the rebel vessels simultaneously. It wasn't invasive, but it was inescapable, like hearing truth spoken directly to your soul rather than your ears. Long ago, before your Jedi Order, before your Galactic Republic, before even the civilizations you call ancient, there existed the Celestials. We mapped not merely stars, but the fabric of reality itself. We discovered truth your modern sciences have forgotten: this universe is not alone. It exists among infinite variants, separated by dimensional membranes so thin that consciousness itself can perceive them. In the temple, holographic projections shifted to show layers of reality stacked like transparent sheets, each containing galaxies, civilizations, histories diverging from common origin points. Ahsoka and Kanan watched in awe as the Archive illustrated concepts that even Jedi philosophy had never fully grasped. Your colonial civilization existed in one such parallel reality, the Archive continued. A universe where the Force does not exist, where technology evolved along different principles, where humanity never encountered the Jedi or the Sith. You developed dimensional transit, what you call FTL jumps, through quantum mechanics rather than hyperspace manipulation. Your technology tears holes between adjacent realities, allowing instantaneous transit through higher dimensional space. On Galactica, Chief Tyrol listened with growing understanding. That's why our FTL creates spatial distortions this galaxy's sensors can't properly read. We're not moving through their space, we're moving through spaces between spaces. Correct, the Archive acknowledged, somehow hearing Tyrol's comment across the distance. Your jump drives operate on principles this galaxy abandoned or never discovered. But dimensional transit is dangerous. The membranes separating realities are delicate. Repeated stress weakens them. Your fleet has executed hundreds of jumps, each one tearing small holes in dimensional fabric. Eventually, one of those tears became large enough that you fell through, not merely displaced in space, but displaced across realities. You're saying we're not just in a different part of space, President Roslin said slowly, her mind racing through implications. We're in a different universe entirely. A parallel universe, the archive clarified. Similar in fundamental structure, same physics, same universal constants, but divergent in specifics. Here, the force exists and shapes civilization. Here, your technology operates imperfectly because it was designed for slightly different physical laws. Here, you are unique, beings from beyond this reality's natural boundaries. Adama felt the weight of that revelation settle over him. They weren't lost in space. They were lost in reality itself. The 12 colonies existed somewhere, just not in this universe. Earth, if it existed at all, would be in their home reality, not here. Everything they'd been searching for, everyone they'd hoped to find, existed beyond a dimensional barrier they couldn't cross. Can we go back? Adama asked quietly. Can we return to our own universe? The silence stretched for heartbeats before the archive answered. Theoretically, yes. Your FTL drives can tear dimensional membranes in both directions. But you lack understanding of which membrane separates your origin reality from this one. The multiverse contains infinite possibilities. Finding your specific home among infinite variants would require navigation you do not possess. But you possess it, Ahsoka said, understanding dawning. This temple was built to map dimensions, to chart reality itself. You could guide them home. We could, the archive agreed. We possess coordinates for thousands of parallel realities, including signatures that match the Colonial Fleet's dimensional origin. But knowledge demands price, as we stated. Are you willing to pay? What price? Adama demanded. Truth, the archive replied. Absolute, unfiltered truth about why you are here, who brought you, and what role you play in conflicts spanning multiple realities. This truth will change how you perceive your survival, your purpose, and your place in the grand design. Once known, it cannot be unknown. Once understood, it will demand choices that will shape not merely your fleet's fate, but the fate of multiple realities. In CIC, officers exchanged nervous glances. The archive's warning was clear, knowledge came with consequences, and those consequences might be worse than ignorance. But Adama had spent his career making impossible choices, and he'd learned that avoiding truth never made situations better. Tell us, Adama commanded. We'll face whatever consequences come. The holographic projections in the temple shifted, now showing specific events. The Colonial Fleet's desperate exodus, their jump drives failing at precisely calculated moments, spatial anomalies appearing at exactly the right locations to guide them toward dimensional tiers. It wasn't accident. It was orchestration. You were brought here deliberately, the archive revealed. An entity known in this reality as the Bendu, a being existing between light and dark, between realities, older even than the Celestials, has been manipulating events across dimensional barriers. The Bendu perceived imbalance in this reality, an empire growing too powerful, a force tilting too far toward darkness, a galaxy losing hope of resistance. The Bendu sought a catalyst, something unprecedented, unpredictable, outside all calculations the Emperor's precognition could perceive. It found you, a civilization from beyond, carrying technology this reality cannot fully predict, fighting from desperation that breeds innovation. You are chaos incarnate to the Emperor's ordered vision. You are possibility he cannot control. Captain Rex spoke from the planet's surface, his voice carrying decades of military experience. We're weapons. This Bendu brought us here to be weapons against the Empire. Not weapons, the archive corrected. Catalysts. Your presence has already altered trajectories. The Empire must now account for threats from beyond their reality. The rebellion has gained allies who operate outside imperial control structures. Power balances are shifting because you refuse to be controlled by any faction. And General Grievous? Ahsoka asked. That fleet that attacked Vader? Also the Bendu's work. It reached across time and dimensions, pulling Grievous from the moment before his death, preserving him, augmenting him with knowledge of tactics yet to come. The Separatist fleet was reconstructed from dimensional echoes, shadow vessels given form through force manipulation. All of it designed to create chaos at precisely the moment your fleet needed escape opportunity. Adama felt sick. They'd been manipulated from the beginning, their escape, their battles, even their survival orchestrated by entities playing games across realities. Why tell us this? If we're supposed to be catalysts, doesn't revealing the manipulation defeat the purpose? No, the archive said. Because true catalysis requires awareness. The Bendu brought you here, but it cannot control your choices. You must choose your role consciously, understanding the stakes. Will you serve as passive pawns, reactive pieces moved by forces beyond comprehension? Or will you seize your agency, make deliberate choices about which reality deserves your allegiance? You're offering us a choice, Rosalind said slowly. But what are the options? The holographic projections shifted again, now showing branching pathways, possible futures diverging from this moment. Path 1, we provide coordinates to your home reality. You repair your FTL drives using knowledge contained in this archive. You return to your universe, abandoning this reality to its fate. The rebellion likely fails without your catalytic presence. The Empire consolidates power. Billions suffer under tyranny. But your people survive, potentially finding Earth in your own universe, rebuilding colonial civilization far from this galaxy's wars. Path 2, you remain here, consciously choosing to become the rebellion's allies. You use your unique capabilities to challenge imperial doctrine, to provide tactical advantages the Emperor cannot predict. You fight not because you were manipulated into it, but because you choose to stand against tyranny regardless of universe. Your people may die. You may never find Earth. But you preserve your freedom and potentially save billions in this reality. Path 3, you reject both options. You chart your own course, allying with neither empire nor rebellion. You survive through cunning and independence, carving out territory in the unknown regions, building new civilization from refugee foundations. This galaxy's wars continue around you, but you remain apart from them. A neutral path, difficult, dangerous, but preserving both survival and independence. The archive paused, then added, and there is a fourth path, hidden even from the Bendu's perception. But revealing it requires you first choose how to answer the fundamental question, do you believe your survival is more important than justice for beings suffering in this reality? Silence filled the comm channels as 45,000 souls contemplated choices that would define their future. Return home, if home even still existed in their absence. Fight for strangers in an alien universe. Stand alone against all comers. Or pursue some mysterious fourth option that even interdimensional entities hadn't foreseen. Adama looked around CIC at his crew, then at the video screens showing President Roslin, showing civilians huddled in cargo bays, showing children who'd lost everything but still deserved futures worth living. He thought about the 12 colonies, gone, destroyed by Cylons who'd been their own creation, their own failure of wisdom. He thought about the rebellion here, desperate people fighting tyranny against impossible odds. He thought about the Empire, order through oppression, peace through fear. And he thought about a question that had haunted him since the Cylon attack: what was the point of survival if you lost everything that made survival worthwhile? Madam President, Adama said quietly, this decision affects every person in the fleet. They deserve input. Agreed, Roslin replied. We'll put it to a vote, democratic process, one person one voice. But Commander, we need time to explain the options, to let people process what we've learned. Can the archive give us that time? Time is relative in dimensional spaces, the archive responded. We can maintain this temple's shields for days if necessary. The Empire cannot detect you here. You may deliberate as long as required. Then we'll reconvene in 24 hours, Adama decided. Every ship, every person, every voice heard. We make this choice together. But even as he spoke, Admiral Radis, who'd been monitoring communications from the Ghost, interrupted with urgent concern. Commander Adama, before you commit to any path, there's something you need to know about Path 1. Returning to your home universe may not be possible. Why not? Because dimensional transits aren't clean reversals. When you fell through into our reality, you created a wound, a tear in the membrane separating universes. That wound has been bleeding energy in both directions. Your home universe has been exposed to force energy seeping through the breach. Our universe has been exposed to quantum disruptions from your reality's physics. The longer you remain here, the more those universes contaminate each other. What does that mean? Chief Tyrol demanded. It means, Ahsoka said quietly, understanding the implications, that if you return home now, you might be bringing the Force with you. Your universe, which never developed Force sensitivity, would suddenly have midichlorians, would suddenly have beings capable of Jedi or Sith powers. You could be introducing chaos to a reality unprepared for it. And conversely, canon added from the planet's surface, your quantum mechanics principles are seeping into our reality. That's why your technology works at all here, you're slowly changing the physical laws around you. The longer you stay, the more your presence alters fundamental reality. The revelation hit like a physical blow. They weren't just refugees displaced across dimensions. They were infection vectors, contaminating two realities through their mere existence. Going home might save the Colonial Fleet, but it could doom their home universe to Force-related chaos. Staying here meant continuing to alter physics in unpredictable ways. There must be a way to close the wound, President Roslin said desperately. To seal the breach between universes. There is, the archive confirmed. Which brings us to the fourth path, the one even the Bendu did not foresee. You could become guardians of dimensional boundaries. Using knowledge stored in this archive, you could learn to navigate the multiverse consciously, to repair damage, to prevent other civilizations from accidentally tearing through reality as you did. You would belong to no single universe, but would serve all realities by maintaining the integrity of dimensional membranes. You're describing dimensional police, Tai said skeptically. Nomads wandering between realities fixing tiers. We're describing purpose, the archive corrected. The Celestials built this network of temples across multiple realities precisely for this function. They understood that as civilizations advance, they inevitably begin probing dimensional barriers. Someone must ensure those probings don't tear reality apart. That someone could be you. Adama felt the weight of revelation crushing down on him. 4 paths, each with staggering implications. Go home and risk contaminating their universe with the Force. Stay and fight for this galaxy while slowly altering its physics. Strike out alone and survive as interdimensional refugees forever. Or become something new, guardians of reality itself, protecting infinite universes from dimensional catastrophe. 24 hours, Adama repeated, his voice strained. We need 24 hours to process this, to discuss it, to decide our fate. As you wish, the archive replied. We will wait. But know this, Commander Adama, President Roslin, people of the Colonial Fleet, whatever you choose will echo across infinite realities. The Bendu brought you here to be catalysts. You have exceeded that role. You have become something greater, beings who stand at the intersection of realities, capable of shaping not merely one galaxy's fate, but the fate of the multiverse itself. Choose wisely. Choose consciously. And choose together. The archive's presence withdrew, leaving only the holographic projections showing 4 paths diverging into infinite possibility. In the temple, Ahsoka and Kanan stood in stunned silence, processing knowledge that challenged everything they believed about the Force, about reality, about existence itself. Aboard Galactica, in Colonial 1, across the entire fleet, 45,000 souls began the most important conversation they would ever have. Not about politics or military strategy or resource allocation, but about fundamental questions of identity, purpose, and what it meant to be human across the infinite expanse of the multiverse. They had 24 hours to decide not just their own fate, but potentially the fate of countless realities. And somewhere in the unknown regions, the Bendu, ancient, vast, existing between all things, watched with satisfaction as its catalysts transformed into something it had never quite anticipated, beings who chose their own destiny rather than accepting destinies imposed upon them. The game had changed. The pieces were moving on their own now. And the multiverse would never be the same. The 24 hours that followed were unlike anything the Colonial Fleet had experienced since the silent attack. President Roslin ordered democratic assemblies aboard every ship, civilians and military personnel gathering to debate, to argue, to share fears and hopes about choices that transcended simple survival. In Galactica's hangar bay, converted into a town hall, hundreds of crew members crowded together while Adama stood before them, explaining options that seemed ripped from mythology rather than military reality. The Admiral had removed his uniform jacket, standing in his tanks and duty blues, speaking not as commander but as fellow refugee facing impossible decisions. Path 1 means going home, Adama said, his voice carrying through the bay. It means potentially finding Earth in our own universe, rebuilding the colonies, giving our children futures that look like the past we lost. But it also means introducing the Force to a reality unprepared for it, potentially unleashing powers and conflicts our universe has never known. A civilian from Colonial 1, a teacher named Maya who'd lost her family on Caprica, raised her hand. Commander, is home even still there? The Cylons destroyed the colonies. What are we going home to? We don't know, Adama admitted. The Cylons might still control colonial space. They might have moved on. Our universe might have rebuilt in our absence, or it might be completely dead. Going home is a gamble with unknown odds. Path 2 means staying here, Roslin continued from her position beside Adama. She'd insisted on standing despite her fatigue, despite the cancer that was slowly killing her, despite everything. The president would face this decision on her feet. It means consciously choosing to fight for this galaxy's freedom, to ally with the rebellion against the Empire. We'd be strangers fighting someone else's war, but we'd be fighting for principles we claim to believe in: freedom, democracy, justice. Chief Tyrol stood from the crowd, his mechanic's coveralls still stained from endless repair work. Madam President, with respect, we're exhausted. We've been fighting for months. Our ships are falling apart, our ammunition is nearly gone, and we're down to counting bullets and fuel drops. How much more can we give to someone else's war before we've got nothing left for ourselves? That's the question every person in this fleet needs to answer, Roslin replied. How much of ourselves are we willing to spend for others? At what point does self-preservation become selfishness? Captain Kara Starbuck Thrace spoke up from where she leaned against a viper, her arms crossed, her expression troubled. What about Path 3? Going independent, building our own civilization somewhere in the unknown regions? We've got FTL capability this galaxy can't match. We could find a sector they've never explored, establish colonies, survive on our own terms. We could, Colonel Tai acknowledged. But we'd be alone. No allies, no support, no backup if things go wrong. And things always go wrong. The Cylons taught us that isolation is vulnerability. Sooner or later, we'd need friends, and by then we might have made too many enemies to find any. Then what about Path 4? Lee Adama asked. He'd been listening quietly, his pilot's mind working through tactical implications. Becoming dimensional guardians, maintaining reality boundaries. What does that even mean practically? Ahsoka Tano stepped forward. She'd been granted permission to address the assembly, her insights too valuable to exclude. It means you'd be uniquely positioned to help civilizations across multiple realities avoid the mistakes that brought you here. You've learned, painfully, what happens when dimensional barriers are stressed beyond capacity. That knowledge could prevent other civilizations from experiencing similar catastrophes. It also means never having a home, Sharon, Boomer, Valerie said quietly. Never settling, never building, just moving from crisis to crisis across infinite realities. That's not life. That's purgatory. The debate continued for hours, spreading across the fleet as people grappled with choices none of them had ever imagined facing. In civilian ships, families huddled together discussing whether their children's futures mattered more than abstract principles of helping strangers. In military vessels, soldiers debated whether their duty extended beyond their own people to encompass entire realities. Captain Hera Syndulla participated in many discussions, offering perspective from someone who'd spent years fighting the Empire. "I won't pretend the rebellion doesn't need you," she said honestly during one particularly heated debate aboard Colonial 1. "We do. Desperately. But I also won't lie and say joining us guarantees survival. It doesn't. The Empire has resources beyond calculation. Fighting them means accepting that you might die achieving nothing more than proving tyranny can be resisted." "Then why do you fight?" Maya asked. "Because I've seen what happens to beings who stop resisting," Syndulla replied. "I've seen worlds enslaved, cultures erased, children taught that freedom is dangerous and submission is virtue. I fight because someone has to, and because even if I fail, at least I'll fail on my feet rather than on my knees." In Galactica's CIC, senior officers gathered for private deliberation. Admiral Raddus had been invited, his technical expertise and military experience offering perspective the colonial officers needed. He studied tactical displays showing the fleet's current status, ammunition at 37%, fuel at critical levels, FTL drive barely functional, 45,000 souls depending on decisions made in this room. From purely practical standpoint, Raddus observed, Path 1 is most immediately beneficial to your survival. Return home, escape this galaxy's wars, rebuild in familiar context. But it carries highest risk of unintended consequences. Introducing force to unprepared universe could be catastrophic. What's your assessment of Path 2? Adama asked. Objectively, what are our chances if we ally with the rebellion? Raddus was silent for a long moment before answering. Honestly? Poor. The Empire controls most of the galaxy. The rebellion survives through mobility, asymmetric warfare, and hope that eventually the Empire's tyranny will breed sufficient resistance to challenge it. Adding your fleet improves our tactical capabilities, but doesn't fundamentally alter strategic balance. You'd be trading certain doom in extended conflict for possible victory in decades-long struggle. You're not exactly selling it, Ty muttered. I'm being honest, Raddus replied. The Colonial Fleet deserves honesty, not false hope. Fighting the Empire will cost you. Many of your people will die. Your technology will be tested beyond its limits. You may lose everything you've fought to preserve. But, he paused, his large eyes meeting Adama's directly, you'll also potentially save billions of beings from lives of oppression. That has value beyond simple survival calculations. What about Path 3? Lee asked. Independent survival in unknown space. Possible, Raddus acknowledged. This galaxy contains uncharted regions where you could establish colonies beyond Imperial reach. But you'd need resources you don't currently possess, manufacturing capability, agricultural infrastructure, population sufficient to sustain genetic diversity across generations. And you'd be vulnerable to discovery. The Empire eventually finds everyone. So we're fracked no matter what we choose, Ty summarized bluntly. You're facing consequences of existing at intersection of realities, Raddus corrected. Every choice carries costs because you're in situation no civilization has faced before. There is no safe path, Colonel. Only different ways of being unsafe. As the hours passed, patterns emerged from the fleet-wide debate. The military personnel tended toward Path 2, many had joined Colonial Fleet to defend freedom, and defending it in New Galaxy seemed natural extension of that oath. The civilians were more divided. Some favored returning home to rebuild familiar civilization, others argued for independence, and surprising number found themselves drawn to Path 4's vision of serving greater purpose across realities. President Roslin moved through the fleet aboard shuttles, listening to voices, hearing fears and hopes and dreams of people who'd survived the unsurvivable. She'd been dying when the Cylons attacked, cancer eating through her body, months or weeks left to live. The Kamala extract she'd been taking for pain had given her visions she'd interpreted as religious guidance toward Earth. Now she wondered if those visions had been her consciousness touching dimensional barriers, sensing possibilities across realities. In the temple, Ahsoka and Kanan had spent hours exploring the Archive's knowledge, learning truths about the Force that challenged Jedi orthodoxy. They discovered that the Celestials had perceived the Force not as mystical field but as consciousness of reality itself, the multiverse thinking, feeling, growing through sentient beings across infinite dimensions. The Force isn't just in this galaxy, Ahsoka reported to Adama via secure channel. It exists across multiple realities, manifesting differently in each. In your universe, it didn't manifest at all, your reality developed consciousness through different mechanisms. But the dimensional breach is allowing Force energy to seep into your home universe. If the Colonial Fleet returns home, they'll be first beings in their reality capable of Force sensitivity. Would that be so terrible? Adama asked. It could be beautiful or catastrophic, Ahsoka replied honestly. The Force grants power, power to heal, to protect, to build. But also power to dominate, to destroy, to corrupt. Your universe would need Jedi to train Force sensitives, to teach balance, to prevent dark side corruption. But Jedi come from this reality. Transplanting them to yours would mean further dimensional contamination. So going home saves us but potentially dooms our entire universe to Force-related conflicts. Potentially. Or it could evolve your universe into something greater, beings who understand both technological and Force-based approaches to existence. The Archive can't predict which outcome would occur. The 24 hours elapsed. The fleet gathered, virtually through communications networks, physically in hangar bays and cargo holds, united in decision-making across dozens of ships. President Roslin had established voting protocols. Every person over age 16 got one vote, majority determined collective choice, with understanding that minority would be respected if dissent reached sufficient threshold. Adama stood in Galactica's hangar bay, now serving as democratic assembly for the entire fleet. Video screens showed similar gatherings across every vessel. 45,000 souls waited to hear their collective voice. The votes have been counted, Roslin announced, her voice steady despite visible exhaustion. By democratic process, the Colonial Fleet has made its choice. She paused, letting tension build, then continued, 28% voted for Path 1, returning home despite dimensional contamination risks. 19% voted for Path 3, independent survival in unknown space. 14% voted for Path 4, becoming dimensional guardians. And 39% voted for Path 2, consciously choosing to remain in this galaxy and fight alongside the rebellion for freedom against tyranny. Murmurs rippled through assembled crowds as people absorbed the numbers. No overwhelming majority, but clear plurality supporting the most dangerous option, staying to fight someone else's war. However, Roslin continued, raising her hand for silence, the minority voices cannot be ignored. 11,000 people want to go home. 8,000 want independence. 6,000 want to serve as dimensional guardians. These are significant populations with legitimate concerns. Therefore, Commander Adama and I propose a compromise, one the Archive has confirmed is possible. We will not force unwilling souls into battles they didn't choose. Instead, we offer choice at individual level. Adama stepped forward, taking over the announcement. Those who voted for Path 1, returning home, will be given that opportunity. The Archive will provide dimensional coordinates. Chief Tyrol and his engineering team will use Archive knowledge to repair one civilian vessel's FTL drive sufficiently for dimensional transit. That ship will carry anyone who wishes to return to our home universe, taking their chances with whatever they find there and whatever consequences their return causes. Those who voted for Path 3, Independence, will be assigned vessels and resources for establishing colonies in unknown space. Captain Syndulla has agreed to provide rebel navigation data for unexplored sectors where the Empire's reach is minimal. You'll have what we can spare to build new civilization. Those who voted for Path 4, Dimensional Guardianship, will work with the Archive to establish training protocols. You'll become the first interdimensional peacekeepers, learning to navigate realities and maintain dimensional integrity. It's untested, dangerous, but potentially crucial work. And those who voted for Path 2, the majority, will remain here aboard Galactica and military vessels. We'll ally with the rebellion. We'll fight the Empire. We'll risk everything for principles we claim to believe in. And we'll do it knowing we chose this path consciously, not because we were manipulated into it. Silence filled the hangar bay, the weight of implementation settling over the assembly. Families would be split. Friends would choose different paths. The Colonial Fleet, survivor of genocide and dimensional catastrophe, would fragment across multiple realities and multiple purposes. This is our choice, Rosalind said firmly. Made democratically, implemented fairly, respecting every voice. We came to this galaxy as refugees. We leave this moment as something greater, beings who refuse to be defined by circumstance, who choose their destinies rather than accepting imposed fates. So say we all, Rosalind finished. And across the fleet, across 45,000 souls facing futures more uncertain than any had imagined possible, the response echoed. So say we all. The die was cast. The choice made. And the Colonial Fleet, or rather, the Colonial Fleets, now plural, began the process of transformation that would reshape not just their own destinies, but potentially the destiny of infinite realities across the endless multiverse. Commander William Adama stood at the threshold of unimaginable future, surrounded by those who'd chosen to fight, and felt something he hadn't experienced since before the silent attack, not hope exactly, but purpose. They'd found meaning in the chaos. They'd chosen to stand for something greater than mere survival. It would cost them. Many would die. Victory wasn't guaranteed, might not even be possible. But they'd face it on their feet, weapons ready, hearts unbowed. Because that's what it meant to be colonial. What it meant to be human. What it meant to be free. And no empire, across this reality or any other, could take that away. 3 weeks after the vote, the Colonial Fleet, or rather, what remained of it, prepared for divergence. The Archive had fulfilled its promise, providing knowledge that allowed Chief Tyrole's engineering teams to accomplish the impossible, stabilizing dimensional transit technology using principles that bridged colonial quantum mechanics and this galaxy's understanding of hyperspace. The civilian transport vessel Astral Queen had been selected for Path 1's journey home. 11,000 souls, families who'd voted to risk everything for a chance to rebuild in their own universe, had boarded over the course of days. They carried with them seeds from the fleet's agricultural ships, data archives containing everything the colonies had known, and the collective hope that home still meant something beyond memory. President Rosalind stood in Galactica's observation deck, watching the Astral Queen prepare for its dimensional jump. Beside her, Commander Adama maintained his characteristic silence, but she could read the conflict in his bearing. Every person leaving was a piece of humanity potentially lost forever. They'd never know if the Astral Queen made it home, never learn whether introducing force energy to their origin universe proved blessing or catastrophe. Do you think they'll make it? Rosalind asked quietly. I think they're brave enough to try, Adama replied. That's all anyone can do, be brave enough to try. The Astral Queen's engines flared with light that seemed to exist in colors reality shouldn't contain. Its FTL drive activated using protocols the Archive had provided, and for one crystalline moment, the ship existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions, a ghost ship flickering between realities. Then it was gone, vanished into dimensional space, carrying 11,000 souls toward uncertain homecoming. Silence held in the observation deck for long minutes afterward, broken finally by Colonial One's transmission. Commander, the Independence convoy is ready to depart. 8,000 people, 12 vessels, enough supplies to last 6 months if they're careful. The second group, those who'd voted for Path 3, had spent weeks preparing for journey into the unknown regions. Captain Syndulla had provided navigation data for sectors beyond Imperial control, regions where the Hutt cartel's influence waned and exploration remained incomplete. They'd be on their own, building colonies from nothing, but they'd be free from both Imperial tyranny and rebellion warfare. Adama watched those 12 ships depart, their engines burning bright as they vanished into hyperspace using navigation protocols rebel technicians had provided. He wondered if they'd survive, if future generations would remember the 12 colonies or build entirely new identity among alien stars. And then there were 26,000 of us, Colonel Tai said, joining them at the viewport. Plus 6,000 training with the Archive as dimensional guardians. Not exactly the massive fleet we started with. But the ones who remained chose to be here, Rosalind pointed out. That matters. Every person left in this fleet consciously decided to fight for this galaxy's freedom. We're not conscripts or refugees stumbling into war. We're volunteers. The remaining Colonial Fleet had restructured over the past weeks. Galactica remained the military flagship, but several civilian vessels have been retrofitted for support roles, medical ships, supply transports, even a mobile manufacturing facility where Chief Tyrol's teams work to adapt colonial technology for extended operations in this galaxy's physical reality. The Rebel Alliance had provided resources cautiously, still testing whether colonial promises would translate into reliable alliance. Admiral Radis had remained with the fleet, his engineering expertise invaluable for understanding how colonial and galactic technologies could interface. Captain Syndulla's Ghost had become semi-permanent escort, her crew working alongside colonial pilots to develop hybrid tactics combining rebel mobility with colonial firepower. And in the temple, 6,000 souls trained under Ahsoka Tano's guidance, learning to perceive dimensional boundaries, to sense when realities were being stressed, to potentially repair tears before they catastrophically widened. The Archive had activated ancient celestial training protocols, and already some colonial refugees were demonstrating force sensitivity, their consciousness adapting to this reality's physics, learning to manipulate energy fields that shouldn't exist by colonial science's understanding. The Empire won't ignore us forever, Adama observed. Tarkin will report what happened. Vader survived that separatist attack. We monitored Imperial transmissions confirming his Star Destroyer made it out damaged but operational. They know we exist, know we have capabilities they can't predict, know we sided with the rebellion. Let them know, Starbuck's voice came from behind them. She'd entered the observation deck quietly, her pilot's swagger tempered by weeks of sobering reality. Let the whole fracking empire know. We're not hiding anymore. We're not running. We're standing, and we're fighting, and they're going to learn what happens when you threaten people who've already lost everything. Spoken like a true colonial, Tai said with something approaching affection. The comm system crackled with incoming transmission, priority channel from the Rebel Alliance's Central Command. Mon Mothma's holographic image materialized, the rebel leader's dignified bearing evident even through imperfect projection quality. Commander Adama, President Rosalind, the Alliance Council has reviewed your fleet's decision and capabilities. We're prepared to formalize alliance, if you're willing. You'd operate as independent force under colonial command, but coordinated with rebel strategic objectives. We provide intelligence, resources, and support. You provide tactical flexibility and capabilities the Empire can't counter. What exactly are you proposing? Rosalind asked carefully. Strike missions against high-value Imperial targets. Your FTL capability allows insertion and extraction without using hyperspace lanes the Empire monitors. Your nuclear weapons, controversial as they are, provide firepower that can crack Imperial installations our conventional weapons can't touch. And your people's determination, your refusal to surrender even facing overwhelming odds, that's precisely the inspiration the rebellion needs. Adama exchanged glances with Rosalind, reading approval in her expression. They discussed this possibility, prepared for formal alliance offers. The vote had decided their path. Now came implementation. We accept, Adama said. But understand, the Colonial Fleet remains colonial. We follow our command structure, make our own tactical decisions, and retain right to refuse missions that compromise our principles. We're allies, not subordinates. Mon Mothma's holographic image smiled, genuine warmth breaking through diplomatic reserve. Understood, Commander. And appreciated. The rebellion isn't interested in controlling free people. We're interested in helping free people remain free. Welcome to the Alliance, Colonial Fleet. May the Force be with you. So say we all, Roslin replied. As the transmission ended, Adama felt weight settle over him, not burden exactly, but responsibility's gravity. They'd committed now, formally, irrevocably. The Colonial Fleet would fight in someone else's war, risk colonial lives for non-colonial freedom, stake their survival on principles that transcended species or reality boundaries. Sir, Lieutenant Gaeta called from CIC via intercom, we're receiving multiple transmissions from the temple. The archive says it has final message for the fleet before entering dormancy. Put it through. The archive's vast presence filled communications networks one last time, its voice touching every mind aboard every remaining colonial vessel. People of the colonies, you have chosen paths with courage we have rarely witnessed across our millennia of observation. To those who returned home, may your universe welcome you and grow wisely through force knowledge you carry. To those who chose independence, may you build civilizations worthy of your sacrifice. To those training as dimensional guardians, may you prevent other civilizations from experiencing catastrophes you endured. And to those who remain to fight, know that your choice resonates across infinite realities. The Bendu brought you here to be catalysts. You have become more, conscious agents of change, beings who refuse destinies imposed upon them. The multiverse watches, and in watching, evolves. We return now to dormancy, but this temple remains available should you need our knowledge. The archive exists outside time, outside single realities. We will be here when needed, waiting across the infinite spaces between possibilities. Choose wisely. Fight bravely. Live freely. And remember, you are not merely refugees from destroyed worlds. You are pioneers of new frontiers across infinite realities. Your legacy will echo through dimensions yet undiscovered. The archive's presence withdrew, leaving only silence and the weight of futures yet unwritten. Weeks turned to months. The Colonial Fleet, reduced but resolute, began their first operations alongside the Rebel Alliance. They hit Imperial supply depots using jump coordinates that bypassed hyperspace monitoring. They evacuated refugees from occupied worlds using FTL transits the Empire couldn't intercept. They developed hybrid tactics combining colonial kinetic weapons with rebel energy shields, creating combat doctrines neither side had imagined possible. The Empire learned to fear the sight of an unknown vessel appearing without hyperspace signature, learned to dread nuclear detonations that defied galactic conventions, learned that refugees from beyond reality could fight with desperation that matched their own stormtroopers' discipline. The rebellion learned to trust allies who demanded independence even while offering loyalty, learned that freedom meant respecting different paths even when unified in purpose, learned that sometimes the strongest warriors were those who'd already lost everything and refused to lose more. And across the multiverse, in dimensions the Colonial Fleet would never perceive, the consequences of their choices rippled outward. The Astral Queen's arrival in its home universe introduced force energy to reality unprepared for it. The Independence colonies established civilizations that would someday bridge colonial and galactic cultures. The Dimensional Guardians developed knowledge that would prevent countless future catastrophes across infinite realities. But aboard Galactica, in the present moment, Commander William Adama stood in CIC watching tactical displays showing rebel fleet movements, colonial Viper patrols, and the vast galaxy they'd committed to defending. He thought about the 12 colonies, gone but not forgotten. He thought about Earth, existing somewhere across dimensional barriers, waiting to be found or perhaps already finding itself. He thought about his son Lee flying CAP, about Starbuck's reckless courage, about 45,000 souls who'd started this journey and the 26,000 who remained aboard military vessels. They'd survived genocide. They'd survived dimensional catastrophe. They'd survived first contact with Galactic Empire. And they'd chosen, consciously, democratically, courageously, to stand and fight for freedom in a universe that wasn't even their own. "Commander," Colonel Tai said, approaching with a data pad, "we've got new intelligence from Rebel Command. Imperial convoy moving through the Lanix sector, vulnerable to interdiction. They're asking if we're interested in the operation." Adama looked at the tactical data, calculating odds, assessing risks, weighing colonial lives against strategic objectives. It was dangerous. It would cost ammunition they could barely afford. Some of his people might not come back. But freedom always came at cost. And the Colonial Fleet had decided that cost was worth paying. "Sound action stations," Adama ordered. "And get me Captain Syndulla on secure channel. Looks like the Colonial Fleet is going to war." As alarms blared through Galactica's corridors, as Vipers launched for another mission in this endless fight, as 26,000 colonial souls prepared to risk everything for beings they'd never known existed months ago, one truth crystallized. They were refugees no more. They were warriors. They were allies. They were beings who'd looked into the infinite depths of the multiverse and chosen to stand for something greater than mere survival. The Battlestar Galactica had entered the Star Wars universe. And the galaxy, this galaxy, and perhaps infinite others, would never be the same. So say we all.